Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Pirates. I have 300 heroes heritage. Chapter 21. Somewhat unexpectedly, facing Garp's words, Sengoku nodded earnestly in agreement and said, "Yeah, the dozen or so vice admirals that we still have in naval headquarters are indeed only average in strength. Let them arrest a great swordsman. Even if they are dispatched together, they may only be able to return without success." After that, Sengoku stared straight at Garp. Originally, after Garp heard Sengoku's words, he planned to nod his head in agreement. However, after seeing Sengoku looking at him, Garp, a decades-old comrade in arms, immediately knew Sengoku's plan and directly refused. The old man will not arrest a little girl for a deal between those scumbags. Sengoku, you should die. Sengoku looked at Garp seriously and growled loudly. Don't forget who you are, Garp. You're a marine. It's your job to catch criminals. This Kuina said, she's still murdered. Then she is a criminal, and it is your responsibility to arrest her. Looking at Sengoku's serious appearance, Garp grabbed a handful of senbei and stuffed it into his mouth a little unhappy, said. Just go, the big deal is to take it as a vacation, just in time to go back to see my lovely grandson. Sure enough, listening to Garp's unabashed perfunctory, Sengoku roared even louder. Garp, take this old man seriously. Garp touched the scum that Sengoku had sprayed on his face, and then suddenly said. Hey, you shouldn't say the purpose directly. Sengoku, just pretend you didn't hear it, the old man will go to East Blue to arrest Kuina. After speaking, Garp walked out of the marshal's office and quickly closed the door by the way. Shish, fortunately, the old man moves fast. Garp just finished his emotion when he heard the loud roar of Sengoku inside the door. However, Garp still ignored it gorgeously, and then walked towards the outside while muttering to himself. Sure enough, I'd better go and see my good grandson Luffy. I heard that since that guy Ace went out to sea a few months ago and became a pirate, he has been shouting about becoming the pirate king all day. Look at the old man's return this time. Don't let that stinky boy taste the taste of the iron fist that the old man loves. On the other side, in the marshal's office, Sengoku, who was once again angry with Garp, took a few deep breaths after being persuaded by Vice Admiral, and then slowly calmed down. Then he looked at Vice Admiral and said, Shall he, about this Kuina, and the reward called Zanu, how much do you think is more appropriate? Crane Vice Admiral heard the words, thought for a while, and said, Our Marine's bounty has always been comprehensively evaluated in terms of strength, potential, impact on the sea and the degree of harm to the public. And this little girl named Kuina, with strength, is already a great swordsman, and it can be said that she is the wave of characters standing at the top of the sea. As for the potential, let alone. The impact on the sea was nothing before we released the bounty, but after the bounty was released, no matter the amount of the bounty, her influence was unparalleled, and it may even be said to be able to there was a huge storm on the sea. After all, a female great swordsman at such a young age will be shocked no matter who hears it. At least, those fellow swordsmen will definitely rush towards East Blue, looking for Kuina. Speaking of this, although Garp is probably not going back to capture Kuina as he said, but for these pirates who went from the Grand Line to the East Blue to find Kuina, I believe Garp will definitely take action. Just to weaken the pirates' strength. As for the last point, it's just killing a small noble in the kingdom, and it's only at the Baron level. If the celestial dragons hadn't intervened, you could just ignore it when you got up. Based on all aspects of analysis, I recommend setting the bounty at 60 million Bailey. Sengoku listened to Crane Vice Admiral's analysis, nodded, and finally thought about it again. There was also a light of wisdom flowing in his expression, but in the end it was doubt. No, 60 million is a bit low, and it is directly set at 80 million Bailey. As for the title, it is called Unparalleled Sword Princesses. Hearing the words, Crane Vice Admiral pondered slightly and repeated, Wushwang Zhanji, Wushwang. Seemingly thinking of something, Vice Admiral Suru looked at Sengoku and said, Could it be, you mean Hawkeye? Sengoku nodded smugly. Crane Vice Admiral saw this and said with emotion, As expected of you, who is respected by the world as the resourceful General Sengoku, you can always play everyone with applause, but they don't even know it. Facing the praise of Crane Vice Admiral, Sengoku also stroked his long braided beard proudly, and then turned his attention to another photo on the table. This guy named Zanu, I heard that he is Kuina's companion. He doesn't seem to have any strength. It's no wonder that Sengoku made such a direct conclusion. After all, Zanu looks like a weak boy no matter how he looks. What's more, if he was really strong, he wouldn't let a girl from Kuina take action. So, Sengoku didn't bother about Zanu's bounty, he just decided. Forget it, just offer a reward of 100 Bailey, the title is called. The next day, when the new reward order was sent to the whole sea with the news bird, the situation in the sea was as expected by the Crane Vice Admiral, and it completely exploded. Sabayati Archipelago, a pirate bought a new newspaper from Newsbird for 100 Baileys, but when he saw the latest bounty, he immediately spit out the water in his mouth. Cough cough cough. The companions on the side watched the pirate suddenly cough violently, and asked worriedly, "Hey, what's wrong with you guy?" However, the guy who saw the newspaper first kept coughing. He wanted to say something, but he couldn't say it at all. In the end, he just shoved the newspaper in his hand, and while coughing, he gestured to his companion to let him see for yourself. The pirate companion understood the meaning of this pirate, and said in surprise, "I want to see, what news makes you do this?" Just as he was talking, the pirate's companion just saw Marine's latest reward order at first glance. Bounty order. The crime is so great that it doesn't matter life or death. Wushwangjian Ji Kuina. Possess the power of a great swordsman. Bounty amount. 80 million Bailey. Charge. Killing the nobles of the kingdom for no reason, with an extremely cruel personality, murdering people like numbness, if you encounter them, escape as soon as possible. Quote. And in the middle of this reward order, there is a photo of a cute but cold girl holding a purple sword in her arms, a dessert in one hand, and a fork in the other, holding the dessert in her mouth. Looking at this reward order, the pirate's accomplice not only gasped in shock. Hey, this little girl actually has the strength of a great swordsman. And the bounty is actually 80 million Bailey. The first reward is such a high amount. It's incredible. At this time, the whole street gradually sounded a series of exclamations. 80 million Bailey. Great swordsman level swordsmanship. The key is that the owner of this reward is just such a young girl. How is this possible? Yeah, this is too incredible, right? Such a young great swordsman. In a few years in the future, the throne of the world's #1 swordsman, isn't Hawkeye going to let people go? Humph. Great swordsman. If such a little girl can become a great swordsman, the great swordsman would have walked all over the sea long ago, and the swordsman is not as good as a dog. How can a great swordsman be so easy to achieve? Yeah, I don't believe it either. It looks like it's another smoke bomb from Marine. Che, according to Laozi, that old guy Sengoku has been sitting in the Marine Marshal's chair for a long time. He has become old and confused. However, in this case, usually only civilians and those pirates who are not very powerful will say. Some of the slightly more powerful pirates couldn't help but explode when they saw the reward order. For example, at this moment, on the 13th island of Sabayati Archipelago, in a ripping bar called Shaki, there is a middle-aged woman with short hair and capable hair. When Shaki saw the photo of the reward order, the hair on her body stood up. Hey, this little girl has such a strong sword intent. With this level of sword intent, the strength is probably not far from yours, Rayleigh, right? No wonder Marine directly said that he has the strength of a great swordsman, and also set the bounty at 80 million Bailey for the first time. It's an amazing little girl. However, the white-haired old man who was drinking at the bar, the vice captain who was worn by the original One Piece Roger, was called Pluton's Silver Rayleigh by the world. At this time, he looked at the reward order in his hand solemnly, and said solemnly, "Yeah, in terms of swordsmanship, it's not that the strength is not far behind me, but at least at the same level as me. Even, it is very likely that the swordsmanship is still better than me." Shaki was stunned when he heard Rayleigh's words, and looked at Rayleigh in disbelief, saying, "Have you been drinking too much, you rough old man? With such an age and a daughter's body, it is already unacceptable to be able to approach you in swordsmanship. Now you tell me decisively that her swordsmanship is still possible, over you." Hearing Shaki's sturdy words, Rayleigh returned to his previous lazy appearance, helplessly spread out his hands, picked up a jar of wine on the bar, and said while drinking, "If you don't believe it, there's nothing you can do, at least judging from the girl's invisible sword intent in the photo, that's the case. Seeing Rayleigh's sworn guarantee, Shaki reluctantly accepted it, but when he looked at the reward order, his face was still full of shock and disbelief. And after taking a sip of wine, Rayleigh sighed in his heart. It seems that this sea is about to have a storm. It's just a pity that Roger died too early, otherwise he would still be able to see the waves of the new era. When thinking like this, Rayleigh's eyes swept to the reward order inadvertently, just in time to see another reward order held by the newspaper. Out of curiosity, Rayleigh took it out from under the newspaper, and when he glanced at the contents of the reward order, he spit out a mouthful of wine. Puff. Regarding Kuina's reward order, it did not gradually fade away with the passage of time, but became more and more enthusiastic. Not only in the first half of the Grand Line, the land of the four seas, and even the New World, have been swept up by such a bounty order. After all, with such a young great swordsman appearing at sea, no matter whether it is Marine, Shichibukai, or the four emperors, they cannot ignore this fighting force. After all, the strength of the great swordsman is enough to touch the ceiling of the entire world. In the backmost sea area of New World, a huge whale-headed pirate ship floated leisurely, and in its vicinity there were several smiling pirate ships. However, with such a few ships, no one dared to provoke them in this new world where monsters are everywhere. Because this whale ship, its name is Moby Dick. Because the name of this pirate group is called Whitebeard Pirates. Because on this ship there is Whitebeard, who is known as the Emperor of the Sea and the strongest man in the world. Whitebeard, this is an existence that is rumored to be more terrifying than evil spirits. At this time, on the Moby Dick, the huge Whitebeard painted with two meniscus shapes and the Whitebeard pirate flag combined with the skull representing the pirate logo. A large group of pirates gathered together and happily held a banquet. At this time, the news bird has been flying slowly from the sky, hovering above the pirate ship. On the Moby Dick, the captain of the Whitebeard pirates' first team, the yellow-haired punk-headed Marco drooped his eyelids and waved to the news bird, and took the news bird's small bag at the price of 100 Bailey. I bought a newspaper from. When Marco, who originally thought it was some boring news, opened the newspaper and saw the huge reward order, the drooping eyelids who seemed to never wake up, the boss instantly opened. Especially after reading the reward order word by word, Rao-Yi Marco, the captain of the Whitebeard pirate ship first team, and the deserving four emperors, couldn't help sighing. Hey, good guy, another monster is born. However, after thinking that this monster is also the enemy of Marine and the world government, Marco couldn't help laughing. Hey, interesting, it seems that this sea is going to be restless soon. Forget it, let Dad read the news first. Having said that, Marco turned around, took the newspaper and walked directly to Whitebeard, who was sitting on the huge chair with a hanging bottle on his body. Dad, there are monsters in the sea again. Marco came to Whitebeard, handed the newspaper in his hand to Whitebeard, and said with a smile. Many other captains around heard Marco's words, and they all became curious. Monster. Among the new generation in this issue, is it the Fire Fist Ace who recently made a name for himself? Did that guy Ace do something earth-shattering again? Probably not. Although Ace is favored by Dad, according to the itinerary, the little guy Ace should be still in East Blue now, right? What big things can he do in East Blue? By the way, how much was Ace's bounty last time? It seems to be 40 million Bailey. Quote. Marco drooped his eyelids and glanced at the other squad leaders who were talking very enthusiastically, and directly interrupted their discussion, saying, Yeah, it's not Ace this time, it's a rookie girl from East Blue who was offered a bounty for the first time, and the reward amount is 80 million Bailey. Hearing Marco's words, all the captains looked at Marco in astonishment for a while, with an expression that seemed to say, You are teasing me. This time, even the captain of the 3rd Division, who has always been relatively silent, Diamond Yoja couldn't help looking at Marco and said, This shouldn't be possible. After all, in a place like East Blue. However, at this moment, Whitebeard's sign of laughter sounded. Kulala, I didn't expect such a powerful little girl to emerge from the sea. Beasta, this little girl's swordsmanship may be stronger than you. Saying that, Whitebeard threw the newspaper in his hand to Joe's and others. Hearing Whitebeard's words, everyone present had to accept this fact, no matter how disbelieving it was. After all, this was what their father, Whitebeard, said himself. Marco drooped his eyes, glanced at the other squad leaders who were exclaiming, and understood their shock in his heart. The bounty of 80 million Baileys alone, not to mention on a 4 Emperors level pirate ship, even in the New World, it is like a Crucian carp crossing the river, too many. The name of a single great swordsman, even if it may cause some surprises, is only limited to this. However, whether it is adding a first reward in front of the 80 million Bailey reward amount, or adding not more than 20 years old in front of Dajanhao, the meaning it represents is instantly changed. An earth-shaking change has taken place. What's more, this girl named Kuina has all the above-mentioned extremes in one. This means that if he grows up, he will be at least another 4 Emperors rank in the future. Marco thought about it for a while, and finally couldn't help but look at Whitebeard and asked softly, "Dad, what attitude should we Whitebeard pirates take towards this girl named Kuina?" "Dad, what attitude should we Whitebeard pirates take towards this girl named Kuina?" Hearing this, the corner of Whitebeard's mouth showed a crescent-like smile, and finally laughed out loud. "Kala la la, how do you treat this little girl? Of course it's a junior. Marco, what are you worried about? Lousy as Whitebeard." Looking at Hockey's awe-inspiring gesture of the strongest man in the world at this moment, Marco made up his mind, and then he laughed. Yes, his father is Whitebeard. What's there to worry about? However, Marco did not notice that when he turned his head, Whitebeard's eyes had a worried look deep in his eyes. Whitebeard looked at the relaxed, laughing sons on the Moby Dick and thought to himself, Lousy never thought that he would be able to have this group of family members in his life and realize his wish. "We are all a group of people abandoned by the sea, but as your father, even if abandoned by the sea, Lousy must protect you to live comfortably and happily. This is Lousy's responsibility. It's just Lousy's body now. Hey, if Ace and the little girl Kuina can join our big family in the future, Lousy won't worry about your safety anymore. By that time, Lousy will be able to walk away with a smile, even if he is dead." At the same time, Wan Guo, Cake Island, and 4 Emperors, and Big Mom threw aside the newspaper handed over by Peros Puro, one of the 4 generals, and shouted, Mom, it's just a little girl's film. I want to attract my attention. Let's wait for her or enter New World. Where's the cake? The old lady wants cake." Wanokuni, Kaido just threw the newspaper aside and started drinking when he mentioned a big jar of wine. On an island in New World, during the daily banquet of red hair pirates. In the past, the reason for the banquet was all kinds of funny reasons, and the person who proposed these funny reasons was the captain of the red hair pirates, the youngest 4 Emperors among the 4 Emperors, the red-haired Shanks. After all, the essence of Shanks is a joke. It's just that today, the reason for the banquet is a bit special, because they have a special guest, Shichibukai Hawkeye, Dracule. Mahawk. Come, drink. Yes, that's it, ha ha ha. Shanks, who was sitting next to Hawkeye, laughed directly while encouraging Gao Leng Hawkeye to drink wine. The other officers on the red-haired pirate ship on the side also took the opportunity to laugh at their captain. Hey, the boss is so shy, it looks like he's drunk. Yeah, the boss's drinking capacity is no better than Hawkeye's, so stupid. Ha ha ha. Come on, Hawkeye, just turn over the stinky boss. Quote. The Eagle Eyes drinking wine have long been accustomed to this funny scene in front of him. I came here to compare swords with Shanks before, but didn't I experience such a scene last time? It's just that since he learned that Shanks has become a one-armed hero, he has become a little disgusted and is no longer competing with swords. He just comes to Shanks for drinks from time to time. And just then, the brain of the red hair pirates, Ben Beckman, came in with a newspaper. Hawkeye, this time the reward order, I hope you take a look, there should be something you are interested in. Hearing Ben Beckman's words, other cadres were a little curious and wanted to know what interesting things he said. Hawkeye glanced at Beckman, put down the wine glass in his hand, and took the newspaper directly. However, when Hawkeye opened the newspaper, Shanks squeezed directly beside Hawkeye with a drunken expression, and browsed the contents of the newspaper together. However, when Hawkeye turned to the reward order, especially when he saw the photo on the reward order, he suddenly stood up. At this moment, the eagle eye has completely lost the coldness just now, and the body exudes endless sword intent, and the whole person is like a drawn sword. As for the supreme sword with eagle eyes behind him, Heidaoe seemed to feel the master's fighting intent, and also trembled slightly, as if he wanted to fight with all his strength. Immediately afterwards, without saying a word, Hawkeye turned around and walked towards his own coffin-like boat outside the island. Shanks looked at such a resolute eagle eye and couldn't help raising his hand. Hey, Hawkeye. However, seeing that Hawkeye didn't stop at all, he finally gave up the idea of continuing to invite Hawkeye to drink. Picking up the newspaper dropped by Hawkeye, Shanks looked at the reward order on the newspaper with a deep gaze. Ocean, it's going to be windy again. At this moment, Shanks no longer looked like a drunk before, just like a real emperor, full of majesty. However, at this moment, Shanks noticed another bounty that was hidden under Kuina's bounty in the newspaper. Out of curiosity, Shanks took away Kuina's bounty, just to reveal the bounty for a newcomer named Zanu below. Just as the eagle eye saw Kuina's reward order, Shanks saw the reward order of Zanu above. The moment when a young man wearing a white trench coat with long sky blue hair. Shanks' pupils suddenly tightened. Beckman on the side noticed Shanks' strangeness, frowned, looked at Shanks in confusion, and said, "Shanks, what's wrong? Is there something wrong with that little girl?" Unexpectedly, Shanks stood up in an instant, just like Hawkeye, and did not directly answer Beckman's words, but directly faced all the pirates and said loudly, "Everyone, get on board and set off immediately, target, East Blue." Everyone looked at Shanks, who had a serious face at the moment, and also realized the seriousness of the matter. They got up in an instant and walked out from the lazy appearance just now. Beckman watched everyone move quickly, then looked at Shanks again, brows full of confusion. "Shanks, are you also going to see the East Blue girl on the bounty?" As soon as he finished speaking, Beckman directly denied this guess himself. "No, with your previous style, even if this girl is really a great swordsman, you won't be like this." At this time, Shanks slapped the newspaper in his hand directly on the table, pointed his right hand directly at a boy's reward order, looked at Beckman with a serious expression, and said, "No, I'm going to East Blue this time, it's him. The calm on the sea will be completely broken by him this time. He has the ambition to subvert the sea. And what I have to do is to see if I can stop him before this peace is broken." Hearing that Shanks actually used the word, can, then Beckman's expression became serious this time. However, when he saw the contents of the reward order Shanks was referring to, he couldn't help but look a little weird even in his city. At the same time, East Blue, a merchant ship, had no idea that the two of them had caused a Shichibukai and a four emperors to rush over from the distant New World to Kuina and Zanu, who were on the deck of the ship at this time, enjoying the gentleness of the sun and the vastness of the sea. At this moment, Zanu, sitting on a black chair, with his white and slender hands and 10 fingers like a flexible elf, dances with ease and joy on the keys of a beautifully painted piano borrowed from Mr. Captain. At the same time, one after another of pleasant musical symbols floated out from Zanu's hands, turning into a beautiful melody that echoed throughout the ship, and flew towards the farther sea. Beside Zanu, Kuina was holding the knife, with both hands in front of her, leaning on the railing. Compared with Meimo, it seems to be enjoying everything at this moment. "Zanu, does the inherited hero have such powerful musical skills? I'm so envious." Thinking like this, Kuina opened her eyes and looked at Zanu, who was still playing the piano with his eyes closed, and he was enjoying himself. With a slender and straight body, a handsome face, a long hair that is the same color as the sky, and the gentle smile on Zanu's face. At this moment, Kuina, watching Zanu playing the piano, gradually lost her mind. At the same time, on the whole ship, the tourists who were scared to hide in their own rooms yesterday were also attracted by this beautiful melody, and they gradually came to the entrance of the hall again with a little boldness, where they crowded to enjoy the music. No one spoke, and everyone listened to the melody quietly at the same time, as if the whole person's heart was washed, and one by one looked relaxed. At this moment, the sound of footsteps coming from behind interrupted the enjoyment of these people, and all of them turned their heads badly and looked at the person who made the footsteps. I happened to see Captain Oda Ichiro hurried over with a newspaper in his hand. Seeing this scene, many people are a little unclear, and they don't know why Oda Ichiro looks so, but there are also a few of them, their eyes are a little flickering. Oda Ichiro ignored these people, squeezed directly from the crowd, and came to the deck. And the footsteps of Ichiro Oda walking on the deck naturally awakened Kuina, who was looking at Zanu in a trance. After recovering, Kuina's face was slightly rosy, and she secretly glanced at Zanu again. After realizing that Zanu hadn't noticed her, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Oda Ichiro also came to Kuina's side, looking a little anxious, just when he wanted to say something directly. Kuina stopped Oda Ichiro's movements. Pointing to Zanu, Kuina said softly, "Captain, please tell me something," in a low voice, "don't disturb Zanu." Looking at this girl with a soft smile, completely different from yesterday's cold expression, Oda Ichiro knew that the girl's soft smile was only shown to the boy playing the piano beside him. Ichiro Oda nodded, and after taking a long breath, Ichiro Oda seemed to have limited determination, handed the newspaper in his hand directly to Kuina, and said in a low voice, "Miss Kuina, you and Zanu are wanted for a reward. Miss Kuina, you and brother Zanu are wanted for a reward." After finishing speaking, Oda Ichiro carefully glanced at Kuina, for fear that Kuina would kill all the tourists on the boat with his anger. After all, people only saved the lives of these people from pirates in this boundless sea yesterday, but until the next day, not only did they not wait for the thanks of these people, but a piece of paper from Marineford said in Marineford, "A bounty and wanted notice issued." Being betrayed like this, no one will feel good about it. Pushing himself and others, Oda Ichiro felt that if he had such power at this time, he would definitely kill this group of people to vent his hatred. Even if some of them are innocently implicated. Hey, I didn't expect that what I was worried about yesterday has become a reality today. Are those who reported to Marine blocked by the Sea Kings? Temers as a lunatic. Don't die. It was originally to keep away from those so-called nobles, so I brought a group of brothers and sisters who also hated nobles to seek a living on the sea, but in the end they were still implicated by the nobles. What a... Hey, now I can only hope that these two little ancestors don't anger my crew. Just as Oda Ichiro cursed angrily in his heart, Kuina just took the newspaper calmly, then nodded directly to Oda Ichiro, saying, "Thank you, Captain, for the news, and the newspaper. Do you have anything else to do?" Seeing Kuina's appearance of driving people away, Oda Ichiro was also stunned. "Although I am the captain of this ship, and being driven away by the guests, I always feel that something is wrong." However, at this moment, Oda Ichiro felt that such a sentence was the most beautiful in the world. The kindest, the gentlest words. Wiping the sweat from his cheeks, Ichiro Oda secretly glanced at Kuina. Seeing that Kuina was not at all angry, Oda Ichiro let out a long sigh of relief this time. However, just as Oda Ichiro retracted his gaze, he met Kuina's slightly displeased gaze, and the cold sweat on Oda Ichiro's face remained again. Quickly looking back, Oda Ichiro wiped off the sweat again embarrassedly, and said, "Haha. The sun is really hot today. By the way, there seems to be something in the kitchen. I need to take care of it. Then I won't disturb Miss Kuina, and I will have a leisurely relationship with Zanu. See you later." Saying so, Oda Ichiro withdrew. Watching Oda Ichiro leave, Kuina pouted and muttered, "I know that the leisure and elegance of our two worlds are disturbed, and I don't leave quickly. What an unreasonable stinky uncle." What Oda Ichiro didn't know was that after yesterday's conversation, whether it is Oda Ichiro's temperament, knowledge, eyes or the means of dealing with emergencies, Kuina has benefited a lot. Perhaps, possibly with dessert. Kuina had already recognized him as the captain in his heart. If Ichiro Oda knew that he just caused Kuina to be upset because he disturbed Kuina to enjoy their time together, and that he was scolded as different things, I don't know if he would cry. As for Oda Ichiro's fear that Kuina will anger everyone, after being enlightened by Zanu yesterday, Kuina is no longer angry about it, but rather interested. As Zanu said yesterday, the sea is so big, in addition to becoming the swordsman you meet along the way, until you become the world's largest swordsman, you always need to find other things to do, otherwise wouldn't it be too boring? Observing human nature temporarily aroused Kuina's interest. Therefore, since yesterday, she has been looking forward to today's arrival, and Kuina wants to know if what the captains Ichiro Oda and Zanu said yesterday will be confirmed. Tisk, the crime is extremely heinous, regardless of life or death. Kuina looked at the big words on the bounty list and sneered. Just killing a piece of junk looking for trouble, and I'm so guilty. Marine, what a representative of justice. At this time, Kuina was really unhappy about the word marine. After all, whoever has just set out to sea and is put on such a hat by marine who is just, will do so. Unparalleled Sword Princess Kuina, Wushwang Sword Princess. This title is quite good, I just want to be that Wushwang. Well, the bounty of 80 million Bailey is not bad. However, when she saw the last line of the reward order, Kuina was completely disgusted by the so-called marine of justice, and even the word justice. Criminal charge. Killing the nobles of the kingdom for no reason, with an extremely cruel character, killing people like numbness, if you encounter them, flee as soon as possible. Seeing this, Kuina's body suddenly burst into a fierce aura, and a pair of show fists also pinched the newspaper tightly, and her beautiful eyes exuded a fierce murderous aura. Kill the nobles of the kingdom for no reason. It was that fool who wanted to take possession of this young lady, and she was killed by this young lady. The character is extremely cruel, killing people like numbness. HMPH, this is a good point. If first see marine now, I will kill one. Kill the nobles of the kingdom for no reason. It was that fool who wanted to take possession of this young lady, and she was killed by this young lady. The character is extremely cruel, killing people like numbness. HMPH, this is a good point. If first see marine now, I will kill one. Kuina was instantly angry with Marine's shamelessness and wanted to kill. It's no wonder Kuina is like this. After all, although you already have the strength to surpass the great swordsman, in essence, Kuina is still a girl who just walked out of the small village of East Blue for the first time, and has no life experience. This is the first time I see someone slandering myself so much that I want to kill someone. At this moment, the melodious piano sound suddenly stopped. Zanu's gentle voice came from beside Kuina. What's wrong? Very angry. Kuina glanced at Zanu who came to her side, still gritted her silver teeth, and said angrily. These shameless marines, don't meet me in the future. Humph. Saying that, Kuina subconsciously pulled Zanu's sleeve, looked at Zanu with a puffed face, and said. Zanu, if I go to beat those marines in the future, you must help me. Looking at Kuina's cute appearance that only shows up around him, Zanu was also a little amused. He raised his hand and subconsciously wanted to touch Kuina's long navy blue hair, but Kuina directly avoided it as usual. Humph, don't even want to touch my hair, hurry up, you will definitely help me. Kuina was a little proud at first and avoided Zanu's claw again, but then said to Zanu again, as if he must get an answer from an ant today. Seeing this, Zanu could only smile and nod in agreement, but then he explained to Kuina. Actually, Kuina, isn't this an opportunity to observe the hearts and minds of Marines executives? Hearing Zanu say this, Kuina temporarily put down her anger and looked at Zanu curiously. She wanted to know, this time, what kind of remarks her younger brother, who has been very smart since childhood, not only knows a lot of news, but also has special opinions on some things, will say. Zanu's ruby red eyes glanced at Kuina warmly, then turned around, put his hands in the kabuto of his white trench coat, and looked at the boundless sea. The oncoming sea breeze blew Zanu's long sky blue hair like a beautiful picture scroll. Kuina, it's actually very simple to understand what a person is thinking. You need to put yourself in that person's place, just imagine some of the things or decisions he made, and you can see his purpose. Marine is just an armed force for world conquest, while world government is based on the interests of celestial dragons as a world noble, and has established many kingdoms with similar governments and powers. Yesterday we killed a noble of the kingdom, as if we slapped all the people with the title of noble in the face, and among them, sky people are also included. Therefore, Kuina, we are wanted. In fact, it was determined after we started it yesterday. And Marine, this is just following the world government, yeah, strictly speaking, following the orders of the celestial dragons and that group of powerful nobles. Saying that, a playful look gradually appeared on Zanu's face, and he continued. However, since the Marines received the order to want us, the first thing to do is undoubtedly to deceive ordinary people. Then deceive ordinary Marine soldiers, and then come with this righteousness. In this way, Marine and the others will always be justice, and the world government will always be the god that stabilizes the balance of the world. Since it's so good for them, why don't you vilify us? As for our feelings, in their opinion, we are already a pirate, what scruples or kindness do they have? That's how we look at this matter from their marine standpoint. Saying that, Zanyu's face became even more playful. However, there are too many ugly deaths and evil things in this world because they're standing on their own side. Listening to Zanyu's analysis, Kuina's beautiful eyes once again raised the color of admiration. Sure enough, Zanyu is still his own stinky brother, and he is so thorough in everything he sees. Oh right, I was just looking at my own reward, I don't know what your reward order is like, Zanyu. With that said, Kuina clenched her reward order into a ball of paper, and then threw it towards the sea. Kuina didn't pay attention to where the throne bounty was dropped, but Fan looked at the newspaper to see how Zanyu's bounty went. However, when he quickly turned to a certain page, Kuina was stunned when he saw the content on it, and then he couldn't help laughing out loud. PFF'd. Ha 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 ha. He he he. Zanyu looked at Kuina, who was laughing and leaning on his shoulder with some puzzlement, and his ruby red eyes flashed a puzzled look. What's wrong? Looking at Zanyu's bewildered expression until now, Kuina suddenly found out that Zanyu still has the talent to be cute. PFF'd. You, show you, see for yourself, it's a reward order about you. Ha ha ha, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be laughing, but I can't help it, he he he. As a result of the newspaper, Zanyu suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Marine shouldn't have anything to hack me, right? After all, at most I can only intimidate that noble, and then throw him somewhere with the pirates. Let Kuina cut him down. Even so, at most, it should be about the same as Kuina, right? But, if that's the case, Kuina shouldn't laugh like that. With curiosity and vigilance, Zanyu finally opened the newspaper, and what caught his eye was his photo. Zanyu in the photo has only one sideways. But through this side face, whether it is the gentle ruby red eyes or the extremely delicate and handsome face, it is undoubtedly showing that this is a real handsome guy. Even in this world of all kinds of strange looks, it is not an exaggeration to be called the most beautiful man in the world. In the photo, Zanyu is looking at the back of Kuina, who is standing next to him with a knife on his side with a smile on his face. What's even more impressive is that in the photo on the reward order, behind Zanyu's brother Kuina, there are 3 smashed boats, and the boats are burning with blazing fire. It seems to be showing that it is these 2 people who have committed such evil things. No, it's more like Kuina with only his back holding a tachi. It's like Kuina is stealing Zanyu's shot. If it's just that, Zanyu doesn't really care, but when Zanyu saw the contents of the reward order, his eyelids twitched fiercely. Bounty order. The crime is so great that it doesn't matter life or death. Wushwangjanji Kuina's little white face, Zanyu, seems to be slightly stronger than ordinary people. Bounty amount. 100 Baileys. Charge. Killing the accomplice of the nobles of the kingdom for no reason. The character is extremely cruel, and the murder is like a numb. If you encounter it, escape as soon as possible. Quote. If there is no ghost-like introduction on the bounty, the original photo on the bounty looks like you are a little less hockey, but it gives you a warm-hearted feeling. But after the introduction below, when you look at the photo above again, isn't this a proper licking dog form? Especially the 100 Baileys bounty. Isn't this Tomo insulting people? Zanyu's ruby red eyes stared at the newspaper lightly, as if nothing had happened. However, the hand holding the newspaper was clenched unknowingly, and a blood-colored chill spread directly from the hand, covering the entire newspaper. Next second, crack, under the freezing cold of ultimate, the frozen newspaper turned into blood-red powder and scattered from Zanyu's hands. Kina, you should forget what I said before. Zanyu suddenly sounded like a proposal, and said softly. Observing human nature is too boring, let's seek revenge on Marine. Kuina heard the words, especially seeing the appearance of Tsunere, who was serious and indifferent to Zanyu, but directly proposed revenge in his mouth, and laughed even more for a while. He he he. Zanyu, you didn't say that before. Position, there are too many ugly deaths in this world, and evil things happen because of standing on your own. Would you like to understand Marine from Marine's standpoint? He he he. This young lady's little white face. He he he. At the end of the laugh, Kuina directly stopped Zanyu's waist from behind, and the little head directly on Zanyu's back laughed even more. He he he. For a time, Kuina's light and sweet laughter lingered on the entire deck, bringing infinite fun to this somewhat boring sea. However, Kuina didn't notice that Zanu, who was facing the sea, also had a slight smile on his lips. I don't know what I was like in the past, but, just like what Zanu, who once stole the world from the heart, said to Kang Yu, your existence is very important to me. And in this life, Kuina, your existence is the same for me. In exchange for your laughter, how can I care about the so-called little white face? What I care about is always you. Saying so in his heart, Zanu couldn't help but raise his head slightly and looked towards the end of the sea, as if he could see another figure. Of course, and you. On the deck of the merchant ship, after a while, the melodious and soothing piano sound rang out again. Kuina and Zanu were able to read the newspapers and the bounties, as could the rest of the merchant ships. Look, I said the two of them would be wanted by Marine. As expected, am I right? I'm not wrong. Hey, young man, I just don't know how to hold back. There's nothing left. That's it. Wanting to kill people with a little strength, I want to say, Marine is wanted. Humph, I'm still playing the piano there, and I've been occupying this deck since I got on the merchant ship, so I haven't had time to appreciate the sea. Bah, pirates. That's right. It's a shame that I still like the guy named Zanu before, but I didn't expect him to become a notorious pirate so quickly. And the most embarrassing thing is that he's actually just that woman's sidekick. Quote. Quote. Many people lie behind the windows of the house, or they look like wise people who only listen to me is right, or look at Zanu and Kuina's outstanding appearance and temperament, envious, jealous, twisted people gloat in misfortune, or listening to the others around them followed suit and scolded Zanu's brother Kuina, as if the two of them had really done something heinous. Of course, there are also some people who are silent. Even if someone wants to defend Zanu and Kuina, they are pulled by the people around them. Don't make everyone unhappy for two unrelated people. But, they are our saviors. Are we just watching these guys wantonly insulting and mocking? Although they did rescue us from the pirates yesterday, today, the two of them are also pirates. Is it worth it to arouse the disgust of the entire ship for the mere two pirates? Quote. It's just that these people didn't realize that in the distance, whether it was the Captain Oda Ichiro, or he and his crew, when they looked at them at this time, it was as if they were disdainful, mocking, gloating, and mocking Zanu and Kuina with contempt. Individuals are the same, and they are also looking at them with the same eyes. A group of so-called idiots. Villains who don't know kindness. Oda Ichiro tidied up the bow he tied around his neck and whispered disdainfully. The mutton sheep, who always live in such a little cognition, are actually mocking the two tigers who don't know the rules of the sheepfold. How can I sneer at the kindness of the tigers as kindness? I don't know, this is the sea. It's not the sheepfold under the rule of those nobles. The tigers never bother to smash the wool, but directly eat the mutton. It's really looking for death. Except for Ichiro Oda, who has some knowledge, everyone on the ship doesn't know that in this world, there is a power called observation haki. All nearby sounds can be easily heard. On the deck, Zanu, who is playing the piano, and Kuina, who is leaning against the rail with a sword, are masters of observation haki. Among them, Zanu cultivated observation haki to the real ultimate. Not only can you hear all things themselves, but you can even hear people's hearts. Zanu, are you not angry at all when those people say that to us? Kuina was originally displeased by these ungrateful and shameless people, and she regretted why she went to this group of guys yesterday. But when he saw Zanu still closing his eyes and enjoying the piano, he didn't seem to be angry at all. Even his piano sound was still so soft and gentle, like a wisp of water washing people's hearts, without the slightest change. Kuina slowly calmed down his anger, looked at Zanu curiously and asked. Zanu didn't stop his dancing fingers, he still closed his eyes while playing the music, and laughed softly. Tell me, I don't care at all. After all, when an elephant is sitting on the side of the road to rest, if a few ants come and scream, have you ever seen an elephant's reaction in such a situation? After saying that, Zanu paused for a moment, his eyes suddenly opened, and the ruby-red eyes flashed a cold light. However, they dare to insult Kuina at the same time, this is unforgivable. On this ship, apart from the captain and his party, it's really hard to find any bright spots of human nature, it's really hard to see. What you sow, you will reap the fruit of faith. However, this time, I don't need to do it myself. 100 causes must have results, and their results will soon be eaten by them. After speaking, Zanu closed his eyes again and continued to play his music. However, from this moment on, the soft and gentle sound of the piano became eager, and I became curious about the eve of the storm. When Kuina heard Zanu say, "They dared to insult Kuina at the same time, this is unforgivable." At that time, the last trace of anger that had been aroused by the despicable and shameless words of this group of people on the ship also disappeared in an instant. "Humph, you are the only one who can talk." Kuina glanced at Zanu with a cold face, and said with a little sneer. "But Zanu, what do you mean by that last sentence?" Zanu just tickled the corner of his mouth and did not answer Kuina directly. "Kuina, what will you do next time the people on the boat are in danger in front of your eyes?" "Go back and save them." Hearing Zanu's question, Kuina listened to the unspeakable abuse and ridicule through observation hockey, and immediately said with some disgust, "Humph, what is there to save such a person? If something really happened, it would be the greatest kindness for this lady to not help me cut a knife." After he finished speaking, he seemed to think of something, and added, "Of course, the captain and his crew are the exception. If there is any danger, I will rescue them." Hearing Kuina's vows, Zanu opened his eyes, a meaningful smile flashed in his ruby red eyes, and said, "Really? Can you really do it?" Staring at Zanu's beautiful ruby red eyes, Kuina wrinkled Xiaochong's nose and said a little unhappy, "Why, do you think that Miss Ben just turned her head and denied it just like you? If it does happen." When Kuina was about to chat with her stinky little brother, her words suddenly stopped, then she got up, turned and glanced in the distance ahead of the merchant ship, and then she turned around with a complicated expression. "Zanu, this is the fruit you said, 100 causes must have an effect, their fruit will soon be eaten by them, right?" Zanu still had a smile on his face, but the sound of the piano under his hand was like a real storm was about to fall. About 100 nautical miles ahead of the merchant ship, a huge pirate flag with a red nose fluttered in the wind on a large pirate ship no less than the size of Zanu and others. And this pirate flag represents the Buggy pirates, which can be regarded as the famous, big pirates, in the whole East Blue. In this poor East Blue where the highest bounty was originally only 50 million Bailey, the first pirate, Buggy was feared by the entire East Blue with the high bounty of 15 million Bailey. Of course, now this East Blue highest bounty has been replaced by Kuina's 80 million Bailey. On the pirate ship, Buggy held a magnifying glass and carefully studied the nautical chart on the table. "No, the location of the treasure should be here. No, it should be here. That's not right. Is this treasure map that I snatched from those fools real? How come I've been wandering around here for months without even catching a single hair? Next time you meet those guys, make sure to let them know how awesome my great Captain Buggy is." However, compared to the furious Buggy, the chief of staff of the Buggy pirates on one side, Quika Buggy sat on the railing and ate oranges a little bored, ignoring what Buggy meant. Another important figure in the Buggy Sea group, Vice Captain Mochi, is even more oblivious to his pet niche. Just then, a little pirate ran towards Buggy with a newspaper and shouted, Boss, look at the latest bounty in this issue. Don't call me Red Nose." Buggy didn't wait for the little pirate to finish speaking, and he flew directly and kicked the little pirate out. Bang! The little pirate flew back at a faster speed without the slightest accident, and slammed into the cabin. The other little pirates watched this scene, don't mourning for this little brother for 3 seconds. "Brother, you're out of luck. It just happened that the boss was so bored that he wanted to get angry, and I can only use you to make the boss angry and benefit us. Brother, let's go." At this time, Buggy also picked up the newspaper that the little pirate had dropped on the ground. The moment he opened the reward in the newspaper, Buggy's eyes widened. Great swordsman, 80 million reward, or is it from Miss East Blue? How can this be? After browsing it, Buggy seems to be in disbelief. Now I take it to my eyes and read it carefully. As if I still don't believe in evil, I directly take out a magnifying glass and read the reward order word by word. Quote. The peerless sword girl Kuina has the power of a great swordsman. Amount of reward, 80 million Bailey. Hiss. The peerless sword girl Kuina has the power of a great swordsman. Amount of reward, 80 million Bailey. Hiss. For a while, Buggy couldn't help shouting out in surprise. It was these words that instantly made the whole ship quiet, but then, what was exchanged was an exhilarating shout of excitement. Boss, our chance is here, boss. Yeah, boss, take us to challenge this guy. As long as we kill her, our Buggy pirates can truly become famous all over the ocean at once. The birth of a new great swordsman must have caused great storms in this world. And we happen to be in East Blue. Offshore buildings come first, boss. Find this great swordsman and kill her in one go. Rewards from all of us, the gold will be greatly increased. That's right, boss, you are a man who can drink with Shanks, one of the New World 4 emperors. Faced with the kind of man who fainted immediately when we met, you can drink with him normally, even in the old age. After scolding that man didn't dare to do anything. Your strength is terrifying to Chang. With your strength, if you are dealing with a big swordsman, wouldn't it be more than enough, boss? Go on, boss, kill this great swordsman. Fame, wealth, everything is ours. Quote. Seeing his crew member's bloodied appearance, Buggy couldn't help wiping the cold sweat from his face, thinking that the bragging that he used to brag before the crew change was actually believed by them. What pure and lovely crew members. Buggy is a little ashamed of these crew members. Thinking of this, there was a hint of regret in Buggy's eyes, and then he jumped up and stood on the big chair, looking at all the crew members sincerely, and shouted. Little ones, you were right, your Captain Buggy is so powerful. What is a great swordsman? What is the 4 emperors? If it weren't for the special status of this captain, what is going on with the 4 emperors of the sea and the stinky boy of Shanks now? This time, let's kill this great swordsman. Let all the guys in the sea see, our Buggy pirates are the strongest. The crew below listened to Buggy's majestic speech, and they all felt their whole body blood boil. The bad man cried with tears in his eyes. Captain Buggy. Sure enough, boss, you are the strongest man in the world. No wonder the boss has been circling the weakest East Blue. It turns out that the boss has a more mysterious identity. Captain Buggy, let everyone know this time, even if you are in East Blue, you can't be ignored by anyone. Let them have a good memory. Captain Buggy. Everyone shouted frantically again and again, while already bursting into tears. Even the big lion niche is touching tears with his huge claws at this time. At this time, with tears streaming down his face, Buggy looked at everyone and shouted. Now, I, Buggy, as the captain, ordered the Buggy pirate ship to start, target, find the new big swordsman, and kill her. Yes, all the pirates burst into tears with excitement and responded loudly. At this moment, Buggy turned around handsomely. In the next second, all the tears on Buggy's face disappeared. After wiping the sweat from his forehead, Buggy drooped his eyes and glanced at the people behind him who were already blood drying. Then he let out a long sigh of relief. Muttered to himself, "Huh, I finally fooled these guys again. Challenge this little girl with a great swordsman. I'm afraid you want to take a knife, right? Hum. Look for it, just take your time to find it. East Blue is so big, the chance of encountering that great swordsman is even more difficult than finding a hair in the sea. What's more, with the strength of Dajanhao, he will soon go back to New World to explore. As long as you don't encounter it at sea during this period of time, it will be almost impossible in the future. Ha, my Captain Buggy is smart. Ha. Laughing, Buggy picked up the paper again, staring at Kuina's reward. But speaking of it, this little girl named Kuina is really a monster. She is so powerful at such a young age. It seems that the position of the 4 emperors of Shanks in the future is very unstable. Ha, deserving it. What is a real pirate? The guy who doesn't understand. There seems to be a new bounty down there. Let's see which unlucky one is being targeted by Marine. Puff, a little white face worth 100 Baileys. What a shame for us men. Don't let Lord Buggy see you in the future. Or let you taste the power of the Buggy cannon. And just when Buggy looked at Zanu's reward order with disdain, the watchman on the ship suddenly said excitedly. Boss, found a merchant ship. And looking at the tonnage, at least it's a large merchant ship. What? When Buggy heard the lookout hand, he was so excited that he became torn apart. He flew up with his upper body and looked in the direction pointed by the lookout hand with the telescope. Wow, There must be a lot of treasure on such a big ship. Thinking like this, Buggy immediately shouted at all the little pirates below, "Little ones, we found a huge merchant ship ahead." The great Captain Buggy felt that before finding that big swordsman, we all want to get treasure. Quote. When everyone heard Buggy's words, everyone was equally happy. After all, being a pirate is one for fame and the other for wealth. If you find that you don't bring the treasure, as a pirate, you will be punished by the sea. On the other side, above the merchant ship, when Buggy discovered this side, the watchman on this side also saw the flag of the pirate ship. Captain, found the pirate ship. The flag that was hoisted was the sign of the Buggy pirate ship. I saw that Buggy with a bounty of 15 million Baileys. He's floating in the sky on the pirate ship. Captain, what should we do? What to do? Listening to the lookout's report, Oda Ichiro was really desperate at this time. That's the big pirate Buggy on East Blue. With the defensive weapons on their ships, it is impossible to beat each other. And the only possibility. Thinking of this, Ichiro Oda subconsciously looked at Zanu and Kuina, who were sitting on the top floor playing the piano at some point. But then I thought about it and thought it was impossible. It's all these bloody fools. They just gossip in the back. A bunch of idiots who don't even know observation hockey. This time, Oda Ichiro cursed out angrily. The destination of this trip was Orange Town, and along the way, I actually encountered 2 groups of pirates in the last 2 days left. How bad is this luck? Originally, after Kuina solved the pirate attack yesterday, Ichiro Oda thought that the crisis was over, so when the group of people were talking about Zanu and Kuina, they did not organize. After all, this group of people is almost equivalent to being they insulted Zanu and Kuina in their faces. In this case, Ichiro Oda didn't have the guts to participate in this matter. But since then, Ichiro Oda has known that Zanu and Kuina will not bless the ship. After all, Ichiro Oda was pleasantly surprised that Zanu and Kuina could not kill each other in this situation. How could he even ask for asylum? As for the so-called transaction, at the beginning, Ichiro Oda didn't take it seriously at all. The 2 strong men want to get on the boat for a ride. Does he still have the ability or the courage to refuse? Not to mention, Zanu and Kuina unknowingly left the largest deck to the top floor at this time, which in itself is a statement on this incident. Thinking of the next ending, Oda Ichiro can only hope that the Buggy pirates are not as fond of killing prey as the Iron Claw pirates before. As for the goods that may be lost, although it is a pity, in Oda Ichiro's view, as long as he and his crew can survive, all this is worth it. At this time, on the top floor of the cabin, the sound of the piano suddenly transitioned from the urgency of the dark clouds over the city to the soft and leisurely, just like an audience sitting alone under the stage watching the upcoming drama. At the same time, in the cabin, the tourists who had been fighting Zanu and Kuina all the time also discovered the pirate group that was approaching fast. One by one was also a little flustered. It's really unfortunate that I actually encountered another wave of pirates. This time, it seems to be a pirate group led by a big pirate called Buggy. Buggy, that big pirate with a bounty of 15 million Baileys. Oh my god. Quote. However, at this moment, no one suddenly shouted. What are you worried about? Our ship has a big pirate with a bounty of 80 million Baileys. It's much more powerful than Buggy's 15 million Baileys. Yeah, it seems to be some great swordsman. Indeed, Buggy can't possibly be her match. Quote. However, the self-confidence of these people was quickly lost in a shell that fell directly outside the cabin. Boom, boom, boom. It wasn't until this moment that they remembered the horror of pirates. Help, I don't want to die yet. Ooh, where are you guys? What about the female swordsman named Kuina? Why don't you protect us? Quote. In the sound of gunfire, shouting, and crying, a leisurely piano sound floated briskly into the blue sky and flew to a farther place. 10 minutes later, the Buggy pirates had directly blocked the direction of the merchant ship's escape. Ha ha ha, little ones, let Uncle Buggy go up and bring all the treasures back. Buggy pulled out the saber from his waist, reached the merchant ship, and shouted loudly to the pirates on the ship. If the guys above don't have fun, let them see Uncle Buggy's Buggy cannon. Superior, ha ha ha. One of the pirates of the Buggy pirates listened to their boss's words, pulled out their weapons one by one, and after the two ships took over, they charged directly towards the merchant ship with a roar. Ha ha ha. Grab. All the treasures are snatched up and dedicated to the great Captain Buggy. Big guy, hurry up and grab it. Get it clean. Captain Buggy taught me that if the pirates don't take the treasure, they will be punished by the sea. You. Yes, it's you. Hand over all the treasures on your body. Bang. Quote. Hearing the sounds of robbery and cries below, Kuina's expression gradually became unbearable. Gritting his teeth, Kuina looked at Zanu, who was still playing the piano and nothing could affect her. Kuina finally said tentatively. Zanu, the pirates below are rushing up. Captain, they may be in danger, or I'll go down. Saying that, Kuina secretly looked at Zanu with a small face, as if she was worried that her own thoughts would be discovered. Zanu's expression was still calm, and he didn't even open his eyes, but at this moment, he still said. If Kuina, you are worried about the safety of the captain and his crew, you can rest assured that the pirates below will not hurt them. Even the cargo on the ship, Mr. Captain, I can guarantee that it will not be lost in the end. Hearing Zanu's words, Kuina bit her lip, but in the end said nothing. She knew that Zanu knew what she meant, but Zanu said it anyway. But Kuina also knows that the biggest reason why Zanu chose to stand by is to vent his anger. Otherwise, with Zanu's character in the past, he has always had to do what he promised. Like this time, Zanu wouldn't have cared too much if the guys below hadn't insulted him. As Zanu himself said, when an elephant is resting on the side of the road, if a few ants come and scream, have you ever seen an elephant's reaction in such a situation? Single quote. And Zanu has such an air. Even if it was just for the promise he made with the captain when he got on the boat, Zanu would save the guys below along with it. And now, on the deck below, Oda Ichiro and a group of crew members struggled to resist the pirates of the Buggy Pirates. It's just that compared to the pirates with hundreds of crew members, the resistance of more than 20 crew members seems so powerless. And the pirates of the Buggy Pirates also left a part of Oda Ichiro and his crew as if they were playing with their prey, and most of them went to snatch the cargo and treasure in the cabin. Looking at the situation in front of him, he heard the sounds of snatch, screams, and cries in the cabin behind him. Ichiro Oda also knew that this time was over. With a wave of his hand, he stopped the movements of the already exhausted crew members. Oda Ichiro looked at the pirates who surrounded him, a pirate riding a unicycle. Based on his experience, it can be seen at a glance that this person is the leader of the group in front of him, or at least he is a cadre-level existence in this group of pirates. With a sigh, Ichiro Oda looked at the pirates in front of him and asked. Respected Mr. Pirates, this time we lost the treasures, goods, and even food on the ship. You can move them away, but I hope you Mr. Pirates can let me and my crew live. Saying that, Oda Ichiro directly knelt down and stroked the boat. Captain, Captain, we can still fight. Captain. All the crew members behind Oda Ichiro watched this scene and burst into tears. Their captain actually knelt down to the pirates for their lives. These old crew members all know the past of their captain Oda Ichiro, and also know that since the time their captain went to sea, they have made an oath. From now on, I, Ichiro Oda, will never kneel before anyone. No matter if it's the nobles of the kingdom or the nobles of the world. To this day, they still remember the scene when their captain made the oath in tears, but now. All the members had tears on their faces for a while, but their eyes were full of unwillingness. Riding a unicycle, Buggy, who was about to show off his acrobatic sword skills, was very upset when he saw Oda Ichiro, who surrendered directly. Hey, you make me very uncomfortable. The prey surrenders directly, which makes me a very poor hunter. Buggy said with a displeased face. The big knife in his hand was directly on the ground, supporting the balance of the unicycle. Hearing Buggy's words, Oda Ichiro lowered his head, shouting in humiliation with tears on his face. Please, Mr. Pirate. However, seeing Ichiro Oda, who bowed his head to beg for mercy like this, and the unwilling and humiliated crew members behind him, a strange smile suddenly appeared on Buggy's face. Although you begged us for mercy first, but as pirates, all we ask is to do whatever we want, and your surrender makes me a little uncomfortable. What should I do? Saying that, Buggy seems to be thinking about this problem seriously. Suddenly, Buggy clapped his hands and seemed to have thought of a good solution, and said with joy. Well, let's play a game. We have one person on our side, and one person on your side. Let the two fight. If your person wins, he will naturally survive. If he loses, if you die, don't blame others. The rest of the people, let's decide life and death like this. Saying that, Buggy didn't give Oda Ichiro and others time to reflect, and directly called out a big fat man from the stunt group of 4 around him. The first game, you go. When the fat man heard Buggy's words, he took a knife and walked out with a grin on his face, looking at Ichiro Oda and the others with bloodthirsty eyes. Seeing that this was the case, Oda Ichiro also got up, picked up Itachi with a face of death, and walked out decisively. Captain, let me go first. Yeah, Captain, I'll go first. Oda Ichiro wiped away his tears, without Kaido. Sorry brothers, I didn't expect to die here in the end. However, brothers, please forgive me for being selfish this time. I don't want to see you fall in front of me. After saying that, Oda Ichiro didn't care about anything, and charged directly towards the big fat pirate with a knife. Looking at Oda Ichiro, who rushed over aggressively, not only did he get stuck in Buggy, but even the big fat pirate who was Oda Ichiro's opponent sneered. From their eyes, Ichiro Oda knew from the way he held the sword that he was an ordinary person who knew nothing. So, in the face of Oda Ichiro who was rushing over, the big fat pirate didn't even move, just watched Oda Ichiro rush past Ali with disdain. And at the moment when Oda Ichiro got close, a fierce light flashed in the eyes of the big fat pirate, and the knife in his hand suddenly stabbed towards Oda Ichiro in a strange posture. Look at my stunt sword skill. Stab. Just when Oda Ichiro didn't reflect at all, the knife in the hands of the fat pirate was already straight on Oda Ichiro's chest. And just at this juncture, the big fat pirate suddenly heard a piano sound in his ears, and then the whole person seemed to be greatly injured, and he spit out a mouthful of blood, and fell straight down with his head up and his white eyes. This sudden scene not only stunned Buggy and the other pirates, but also Ichiro Oda and their crew. After all, this is too fantastical, isn't it? Originally, Oda Ichiro had already waited to die, but the next scene was actually the opponent vomiting blood to the end. So creepy. However, after being stunned for a moment, Oda Ichiro reacted. I couldn't help turning my head and looking down at the top deck of the cabin. At this moment, Oda Ichiro could even faintly hear the faint sound of the piano. Thank you Zanu. On the top deck, Kuina was relieved after seeing the scene below. However, under the observation Haki just now, he also sensed the miserable situation in the cabin, which made Kuina's eyebrows furrowed. At this moment, Kuina, who had sworn before that she would never help, really softened her heart again. Especially looking at a little girl in the cabin, her face was covered in blood and staring blankly at the scene of murder and looting in front of her, and even Kuina's heart trembled. This time, Kuina really couldn't watch this scene happen. Zanu. This time, when Kuina looked serious and wanted to inform Zanu, Zanu did stop moving his fingers on the keys. Looking at Kuina with a calm expression, he took over the words and continued. This time, you decided to help them. Seeing Zanu showing such a serious look to herself for the first time, Kuina's heart was also shaken, but when she thought of the miserable appearance she had seen just now, Kuina finally nodded. Meimu looked straight at Zanu and said, that's right. I really can't watch the following things happen again. If you really just want to take revenge for me, that's enough, really enough. They are just ordinary people. I just can't ignore it. I'm going to save them. If you really just want to take revenge for me, that's enough, really enough. They are just ordinary people. I just can't ignore it. I'm going to save them. Looking at the firmness in Kuina's eyes, Zanu's serious eyes and ruby red eyes finally softened. A smile appeared on the originally plain but serious face, just like the warm appearance in the past. He chuckled lightly. Since Kuina wants to do it, let's do it. No matter what Kuina does, I will support you. Speaking of which, Zanu seemed to think of something and reminded jokingly. Oh, by the way, the pirates below, just beat and wound, don't kill them all first. After all, I think their ships are pretty good, and they robbed them and used them as our sailing tools for the time being. Leave those pirates for us to work on the ship first. Hearing Zanu's words, Kuina immediately jumped to Zanu's side happily, kissed Zanu's cheek fiercely, and then jumped back and fell towards the lower deck. Looking at Zanu at the same time, he said happily. I knew you would definitely support me. As expected of Miss Ben's little white-faced follower, she has a lot of winks. He. Seeing that Kuina had disappeared from the top deck, Zanu touched the spot where Kuina was attacked and shook his head with a smile. Then the eyes of Ruby Red became deep. Looking at the piano in front of him, he muttered to himself. Kuina, although you helped the group of people below, will that group of people really appreciate your help? I hope that after this time, you can really grow up and truly know this sea. After all, Mr. Captain is right. This is a sick world. And Kuina, who jumped off the top deck, fell directly to the door of the cabin. With a cold look on his face, he glanced at his card Buggy and the other pirates. Kuina nodded to Oda Ichiro, then took out the Minazuki in his hand and walked into the cabin. And it was the look just now that instantly made the chief of staff of the Buggy pirates, Kuyika, Buggy's body stiffened, and the hairs all over his body exploded. Because, card Buggy also saw Kuina's reward order before. She is that great swordsman girl, the peerless sword girl Kuina. How is she on this ship? This time is really over. As the top 3 of the Buggy pirates, who can compete for the number 2 position, naturally you cannot believe in Buggy like other pirates in the pirates. After all, Buggy knows how many pounds and how many pounds. Even behind Buggy's exciting declaration before, Buggy's ideas can be guessed by Buggy. It's just that neither Buggy nor card Buggy thought that it took only 1 second to see someone's wanted notice announcing that they were going to kill them, and the next second they met the person directly. For a time, Buggy could not help but cry a little. Captain Buggy, I'm so hard. Ooh. Just as Buggy was crying in his heart, Oda Ichiro couldn't help kneeling directly on the boat again. However, unlike the helpless, humiliated and unwilling kneeling towards Buggy just now, this time Ichiro Oda is completely willing to kneel. Thank you for helping once again. Thank you for saving our lives once again. I'm so grateful. Brother Zanu, Miss Kuina. At the end, Oda Ichiro's forehead slammed on the deck, making a huge knock. When all the other crew members saw this, they, like their captains, knelt down directly towards the cabin, and shouted in unison. Grateful. Bang. The group of pirates brought by Buggy and surrounded Oda Ichiro and his party. They don't dare to act rashly now. Just looking at Ichiro Oda and the group of people kneeling in the direction of the cabin, he was a little overwhelmed. Lord Buggy, what shall we do now? A pirate swallowed his saliva and stuttered to look at Buggy. It's too scary, is there any wood? The girl just glanced at it, and she felt a monstrous sense of oppression. At that moment, this little pirate felt like he was going to die in the next second. Is this still a person? And the other little pirates are the same as the one who just spoke. This time, they have truly seen what is the powerhouse on the sea. Watching everyone turn their attention to him, Buggy tried hard to hold his slightly trembling legs for this, glanced at Oda Ichiro and his group, who had ignored his group of pirates at this time, gritted his teeth, and faced the one next to him. The younger brother said, Go, let Boss Buggy come up or we're in real danger today. Chapter 31. Go, let Boss Buggy come up, or we'll be in real danger today. Card Buggy originally wanted the younger brothers to call Buggy over. After all, in his eyes, he had long discovered that Buggy had a close relationship with the red-haired Shanks, one of the New World 4 emperors. Otherwise, with their boss Buggy's soft-hearted personality, how dare he yell at Shanks? And most importantly, Shanks doesn't even care. If it is said that the two are not related, Buggy thinks, even if he kills Mochi, he will not believe it. This time, I can only hope that this unparalleled sword girl can let us go because of the strong relationship between the captain and the red hair. However, what Buggy didn't notice was that when the younger brothers around him heard him mention Buggy, everyone's eyes lit up. Yeah, we also have Lord Buggy. Boss Buggy is a man who dares to get angry with the red-haired Shanks of the 4 emperors. It's not easy to deal with that little girl just now. Humph, she won't be arrogant for long. Yeah, let's go and call Boss Buggy over here. Quote. Card Buggy looked at this group of young brothers who were suddenly excited and screamed like a cockfight. He only felt that his feet were soft and he almost fell to the ground. This group of pit bulls. Is this God? Looking for death is not such a way. You fools. Why don't you call Boss Buggy over here? What the hell are you calling? However, Buggy's remarks fell into the ears of a kind of younger brother who was already thinking, and automatically understood it as another meaning. Looks like Mr. Buggy is already upset about that chick. I want to take revenge on the boss of Buggy, Zhao Guolao. Don't talk about Mr. Buggy, just like that little girl just now. Lousy is angry when she thinks about it. Wait for the boss of Buggy to come over, I must rush over to kill her first. Yes, it is. Even a few little pirates directly raised their knives and shouted harsh words into the cabin. The little girl inside, wait for the uncles, our boss will kill you when we come. Looking at this group of melon skin boys, Buggy's face turned white with fright this time. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind Buggy. It seems that there is still a lot of resistance to our Buggy pirates. Don't she know, the Buggy pirates, but I, the great Buggy Lord, are covered. Who dare to resist our Buggy pirates and stand up for Mr. Buggy? This uncle will let you taste the power of the Buggy cannon. Wow, ha 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 ha. Buggy hasn't turned around yet. Buggy's upper body is already wearing a pirate captain's coat, wearing a pirate captain's exclusive hat, and holding two big knives in his hand flew directly from the top of Buggy's head. A group of pirates looked at Buggy's high-profile appearance and Hockey's words, and they admired them to the extreme. It's Boss Buggy's chop fruit ability. That's right, Boss Buggy is a broken man who ate chop fruit, and he's not afraid of that little girl with a sword. Boss Buggy is mighty. Boss Buggy, a little girl with a sword just ignored us and threatened us in the end. You must vent your anger for us. Yes, Boss Buggy, that chick is in the cabin now. You must avenge us. Quote. Buggy watched the younger brothers excited and complained to himself, and immediately shouted. Okay, Lord Buggy got it. How dare you bully the crew of the great Captain Buggy? Look at me not. When Buggy was about to say harsh words, Buggy suddenly jumped up and covered Buggy's big mouth with both hands from behind. I really don't dare to let Buggy go on. Boss, stop talking. If you go on, our group will really die here. Buggy's face was full of cold sweat, frightened by Buggy's words, and his face was bloodless. Buggy, who was still a little unhappy at first, heard Buggy's words, especially when he heard Buggy's trembling tone. Buggy was also a coward. Buggy, who was still floating in the air, couldn't help but turn his back to the little brothers below, and brought the Buggy behind him, and asked in a low voice. Hey, Buggy, what's wrong? Is there any danger on this ship? When he was talking, Buggy's eyes started to drift towards his pirate ship. Something was wrong, and Mr. Buggy was about to run away. Buggy also saw Buggy's idea, but still wiped the cold sweat, and generally poured cold water on Buggy. Boss, even if you get on the boat first, we may not be able to adjust it. The person sitting on this boat is the peerless sword girl Kuina, who we just discussed to crusade. The person sitting on this boat is the peerless sword girl Kuina, who we just discussed to crusade. Wu Shuang Gng. Kuina. Buggy calmly repeated the key words in Buggy's words, and after speaking, he confirmed the final information to Buggy, raised his eyebrows and said lightly. Is that the big swordsman girl? Buggy watched as Buggy was still so calm after knowing the news, and he couldn't help feeling a little shaken about his previous guess. Is it possible that the boss of Buggy is really hidden? Otherwise, how can it be so indifferent? Thoughts flickered in his heart, but in reality, Buggy was also relieved, and only then did he recover a little bit of confidence. At the same time, he nodded to Buggy, affirming Buggy's previous question. Just when Buggy was about to confirm whether Buggy is the real hidden boss, I suddenly saw it. Under Buggy's big red nose, he was actually scared out of his nose. Buggy, I'm leaving, the mountains and rivers meet, let's see you in the future. The cold sweat on Buggy's face flowed straight out as if he didn't want money after getting the confirmation of the card Buggy. At the same time, as soon as he dropped the card, Buggy was about to run away. What are you kidding? It was just bragging in the past, but this time I actually met the real master directly. Go up and challenge the great swordsman. Do you think life is too moist? When I thought of the appearance of Pluton Rayleigh, the vice captain who was also a great swordsman who I had seen on the Roger ship, the appearance of Pluton Rayleigh's sword splitting the sea, Buggy's flying body was almost disintegrated in an instant. However, just when Buggy was about to run, Buggy jumped up and grabbed Buggy. Boss, you can't just leave like this. If you don't say that you just leave us like this, even if you run to the boat now, how many meters can you run? People came with a sword energy, and the whole ship was chopped down for you. The dragged Buggy heard Buggy's words, and while shaking the clothes being dragged by Buggy, he shouted at Buggy. What can I do if I don't run? Wait a while, that female swordsman comes out and slashes Mr. Buggy with a knife. When he was talking, the tears in the corner of Buggy's eyes came out anxiously. However, just as Buggy's voice fell, a gentle boy's voice suddenly appeared in the ears of the two of them. Actually, I think what Buggy said makes sense. You should listen to the red nose. Lousy, called Buggy. Clown Buggy. Not a red nose. What that fool said just now, stand up for me. Buggy, who was originally scared to run away, was completely angry when he heard that someone called him a red nose. Even the original plan to run away was put aside, and he turned his head and glanced around fiercely, trying to find the fool who called him the red nose. Red nose, but Buggy's taboo. Even this time, Buggy threw off his own card, Buggy, and floated directly to the deck. He looked fiercely at the little pirates who had doubts that the crew was suitable for him at this time, and said loudly, "Get out for Uncle Buggy. Uncle Buggy wants you to know the power of this Uncle's Buggy Cannonball." Hey, did you notice what that fool said just now? The little brothers all shook their heads. Knowing the taboos of their boss, how could they be asking for trouble at this time? Seeing the boys shaking their heads, Buggy turned around and swept towards the other group of people on the deck with a fierce look. His eyes just saw that not far from him, a young man with long blue hair was looking at him with a smile. This guy seems a little familiar. Buggy thought so in his heart, but in reality he pointed the big knife in his hand directly at the blue-haired boy, and asked viciously, "Hey, boy, that's you. Did you hear who was yelling red nose? Knowledge, I don't know. Waste your ears." When he was about to get angry and curse, Buggy was also stunned, and suddenly reacted. The upper body floated directly in front of the young man, looking at the young man with a fierce look, saying, "Boy, you just said, you know." The young man nodded very sincerely and continued, "I know, because that's what I said just now." Okay. When Buggy heard the words, his eyes widened immediately, and he looked at the boy in disbelief. Is this kid a fool? When the thought just came up in Buggy's mind, he saw the young man in front of him still gently explained, "I'm not stupid." Hearing the boy's words, Buggy subconsciously retorted, "You're not a fool, how can you be direct?" Suddenly feeling that something was wrong there, Buggy stopped and said nothing, frowned and thought. The next moment, scare, Buggy stepped back again and again in an instant, until he pushed it to the railing behind him, and then stopped when there was no way to go back. His legs trembled slightly. Looking at Zanu, Buggy shouted in horror and asked, Are you a human or a ghost? How do you know what's on my mind?" Seeing Buggy's terrified appearance, Zanu's expression didn't change at all. He still had the same smiling appearance. When Sheng explained, "Yes, I'm a ghost." Hey, ghost. Buggy was instantly frightened to the point of being paralyzed. Can't get up this time. Looking at the frightened Buggy, Zanu was a little speechless. At this moment, a voice came from behind Zanu. "Brother Zanu." Zanu turned around, looked at Oda Ichiro and others with excited and grateful eyes, and nodded with a chuckle. "Okay, don't worry, you are all right. Brother Zanu." Buggy, who was hiding and shivering with his subordinates, heard Oda Ichiro calling Zanu's name. His eyes were a little puzzled. Zanu. I feel like I've heard this name somewhere. Where? The next second, Buggy directly floated up, pointing at Zanu's back and shouting, "I see, you're not a ghost at all. You kid is the newcomer on Marine's bounty order today. The little white face next to that peerless sword girl Kuina." Speaking of this, Buggy feels like he is about to explode. I was actually frightened by such a shame of a man, just now. The more I think about it, the more angry it gets. Buggy now just wants to give this guy a knife. But when he thought that Kuina, the big swordsman behind this little white face, was also on this boat, he could only endure it with humiliation. Perhaps the current Buggy also wants to understand, knowing that he really can't escape the slash of the great swordsman, so he has given up the plan to escape. However, Even at this moment, Buggy is still very puzzled that Zanu could hear his own voice just now. How can it be repaired? Hey, little white face. What's the matter with the ability that you heard Mr. Buggy's inner thoughts? Is it also the ability of devil fruit? Oh no. Zanu heard Buggy's question, turned around just like when he first appeared, and smiled. As a crew member on One Piece Roger's ship, you should know one of your captain's abilities. Only by developing the ultimate of seeing and hearing can you gain the ability to listen to the voice of all things. Unfortunately, I just happen to be able to do this, and I will continue to develop it, and now I can hear the voice of everything. Hearing Zanu's words, Buggy was really shocked this time. Isn't he just a little white face? How does he know about my past? No, it's not just my past. He actually knows exactly what the captain used to be. And he actually not only cultivated the same ability as the captain, but also further developed this ability. Doesn't that mean this little white face? No, this guy named Zanu, on observation Hawkeye, has surpassed Captain Roger. How can this be? Buggy looked at the smiling Zanu and was shocked and couldn't say anything. At this moment, Buggy came to his senses. This one in front of me is a real boss. That group of Marines, they are so blind. This kind of character who can surpass Captain Roger just by showing observation Hawkeye, even if it is placed in the new world where monsters are rampant, it is at least a giant crocodile guy. Why is he named the little white face next to Wushwang Zhangji? Why is there only a bounty of 100 Bailey? Buggy scolded Marine who made Zan use bounty for a while. However, what Buggy didn't notice was that his younger brothers were all looking at him with green eyes at this moment. One by one can't wait to pounce on them. Wow, Captain Buggy, you are actually one of Roger's crew. Ha ha ha, the boss is indeed the most powerful existence. Woo, it's so touching, I can actually get in touch with the crew of the legendary One Piece. Boss, I will follow in the future. Even if I go to the Mountain of Knives. Hey, boy, knowing that my boss is on One Piece's ship, how dare you? That's right, I advise you to surrender. Maybe our boss will allow you to join our great Buggy boss and swing down. Quote. When Buggy was praised by his subordinates, he was still fluttering, but after hearing it, cold sweat broke down on Buggy's head. Bang, 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 bang. Without saying a word, Buggy got up quickly and gave this group of ignorant younger brothers a fist. Idiots, shut up. At this moment, Buggy is about to cry. Let this big guy throw himself in. Join yourself. Can't find death. These fools. Is there such a trick to your own captain? The card Buggy on the side looked at Buggy's face at this time, and at the same time, he was still a little gloomy. If it weren't for the fact that you are always fooling me, boss, could they become like this? Finally eat the bad fruit. Hey, Buggy. After hearing Zanu's voice coming from himself, Buggy, who was mercilessly cleaning up his group of blind brothers, turned around instantly. Looking at Zanu vigilantly, Buggy stammered and said, "You, what are you going to do? I can tell you, don't mess around. Since you know my identity, then you should also know that the red-haired Shanks, one of the 4 emperors, is my brother. If you dare to touch me, Shanks will not let you go." Of course, there is another reason why Buggy dares to speak so hard-heartedly, up to now, and that is his devil fruit ability. Buggy noticed the tachi hanging on Zanu's waist, and Zanu's companion Kuina was a great swordsman, so Buggy inferred to a conclusion. Zanu, who should also be a swordsman, plus the superb observation Hawkeye. So Buggy's final conclusion is that Zanu is also a great swordsman. Although this conclusion is somewhat bizarre, for Buggy, this is the best result. Because Buggy is a split person who ate chop fruit, and he is not afraid of the swordsman. Even if the opponent is a great swordsman, he can't hurt himself in the slightest. This is the basis of Buggy. Humph, just a big swordsman. As Buggy was thinking about it, he saw the smile on Zanu's face on the opposite side gradually become a little playful. Cock. Buggy suddenly had a bad feeling. And the next moment, this hunch became a reality. Buggy, I don't know if your chop fruit can block the cold dome on my waist, but... Having said that, Buggy saw Zanu suddenly take a step forward. Immediately afterwards, a visible cold air erupted from Zanu's feet, and in an instant, it swept over his group. Ruined. Buggy was a little shocked, and after shouting in disbelief mixed with despair, his eyes closed tightly subconsciously. This is the ability of frozen fruit. This guy is actually a fruit ability. However, isn't frozen fruit the fruit of the Admiral of Headquarters Aokiji? Why does this guy have one too? Uncle Buggy is not afraid of swordsmen, but I am most afraid of this ability to control my body. For a time, Buggy cried out in despair. However, after more than 10 seconds passed, Buggy suddenly realized that something was wrong. Trying to open his eyes, he saw Zanu on the opposite side, who had resumed his gentle smile at the beginning. Am I not frozen? Buggy rubbed his eyes in disbelief, then turned his head to look at Buggy and the younger brothers with some uncertainty. When he wanted to confirm, he just watched the scene behind him. Suddenly, Buggy's jaw fell to the ground in an instant. This is. The younger brothers around Buggy are also like Buggy at the moment, looking at the whole sea frozen in front of them, they can't close their mouths in shock for a moment. Gouda. No one started to swallow the saliva first, and then everyone seemed to be infected, and they all swallowed their saliva. Zanu could even hear Odaichiro and the crowd behind him. To the shock of the crowd, Zanu did appear to be calm and unconcerned. Just a little trick, should be able to get the eyes of Captain Buggy, right? This is not Zanu's pretended modesty or something, but in Zanu's methods, this frozen sea was almost just a casual blow. Card, crack, card. Hearing Zanu's words, the whole group of Buggy pirates turned around like a robot, and the expressions on their faces were a little stiff. At this moment, even the stupid younger brother began to doubt, could their boss Buggy really beat this man? The younger brothers looked at each other with their backs on their backs, and immediately saw a trace of clarity in each other's eyes. Immediately afterwards, everyone took a step forward, slammed down to the ground, and shouted at Zanu. Boss, accept us. Buggy. Buggy was stunned by this scene. My little brother is trying to steal his limelight. Thinking like this, Buggy didn't say a word. He turned around and kicked the little brothers over. Then he came to Zanu with a smile on his face, and said with a smile. Your Excellency said, you are so powerful, how can little he let you call me, Captain? Don't dare, I'll be your little brother from now on. What you say is what you say. Even if it's not, the little ones will make it, yes. Hey, my lord. Zanu was really speechless at this time. He never thought that Buggy, the crew member of the dignified One Piece Roger ship, could be so shameless. Gently glanced at the smiling Buggy, Zanu chuckled. Since Captain Buggy said so, then I will not refuse. Buggy was stunned for a moment, and his face was stunned for 3 consecutive times. What did I say? Or what did I promise? Why don't I know it myself? However, Zanu ignored Buggy's thoughts and continued. It just so happens that Mr. Odaichiro's ship arrives at Orange Town tomorrow, which is the end point. Originally, I planned to grab a pirate ship above Orange Town to take Kuina and me on our next voyage. However, I actually met Captain Buggy and you today, so that's just right. Saying that, the smile on Zanu's face became more cordial. But in Buggy's eyes, it looks like a ghost. Only to hear Zanu continue. So, Captain Buggy, now I announce that your Buggy pirates were robbed by me today. From today, all of you are my captives. You may have to follow us until we find a new unlucky guy to take your class. Having said that, Zanu's ruby red eyes narrowed with a smile, and said with a smile. Didn't Captain Buggy say, I'll be your little brother from now on? What you say is what you say. Even if it's not, the little ones will make it a yes. Now I just fulfill your wishes. Surprise. Yo, you big fool. Buggy's face turned green at this time. Especially looking at Zanu, whose smile became more gentle at this time, he shuddered for no reason. I am so surprised. This guy is definitely a devil. When Buggy was so sullen in his heart, he saw Zanu's ruby red eyes looking at him playfully. Suddenly Buggy was scared into a cold sweat. Only then did he remember that this ruthless man in front of him might be able to hear people's hearts. Cough. Boss, you were right. I am so pleasantly surprised. Thank you, boss, for fulfilling my wish. Ha ha. Some people cry when they laugh and laugh. Seeing such a miserable appearance of their boss, all the pirates of the Buggy Pirates also have a heart at this time. However, at this moment, a behemoth flew out of the cabin and smashed hard in front of Buggy and the others. Woo! Hearing this familiar sound, Buggy and the others hurriedly looked at the big guy, and sure enough, they saw a big lion with a big head. It's that big lion of the Buggy pirates, niche. It's just that Buggy and others saw that not only were their heads covered with bags, but even the hairs on their bodies were called black cars, and whether there were strands of electricity flashing on their bodies, every time Niche's body was unconscious, twitching between. Perhaps seeing Buggy and others, the big lion's big eyes that were red and swollen into walnuts seemed to see a savior, and the tears flowed out like a waterfall. It makes me sad to see it. However, the next moment, the big lion Niche seemed to be pulled into the wound, and instantly fainted in pain. Hey! The pirates present watched this scene, and intuitively a cold air rose from behind. One by one, they stayed in place. It's too miserable, isn't it? Before everyone could react, another shadow fell from the sky. Bang! Crack! Mochi! Buggy's group looked even more miserable than Niji. Not only did they smash the deck of the ship, but Mochi's face was blue and purple, and his head was almost the same size as Niji's. This time, he really lost his voice. However, when I saw that Mochi just passed out just like Lychee, I was slightly relieved, and I was also secretly grateful to this Mochi in my heart. Mochi, fortunately, you were rushing to search for hidden treasures today, otherwise it may be me who is lying here now. Mochi, you are indeed my good brother. Buggy looked at Mochi who passed out with emotion, and thanked him in his heart. Others, at this time, secretly thought of their good luck. The big guy they met did not want the Wushwang Zhanji who had just entered, it was too cruel. Zanu also saw these two guys who were beaten out of the cabin, but at this time, Zanu didn't have a smile on his face. Turning around, Zanu's sapphire red eyes looked towards the door of the cabin, with a hint of distress and worry in his eyes, and muttered. Kuina, I hope that after this time, you can truly understand the world, and at the same time, you can also find your own kendo. Great swordsman, beyond the level of great swordsman. The real swordsmanship is only the way in your heart, the way that leads to infinity. These are just halfway scenery. A few minutes ago, Kuina jumped from the top floor and quickly entered the cabin hall. Especially when watching a big lion with its mouth open and walking in front of the girl I felt earlier in observation hockey. Shunpo stepped on, and Kuina came to the little girl almost in an instant. Everyone, stop. In the cabin hall, everyone's attention was attracted by the scene in front of them. The moment many tourists on merchant ships saw Kuina, their faces were full of despair, and a light suddenly appeared on their sad faces. Only then did they remember that there was a great swordsman on this ship. However, many people who reacted in the same way looked at their relatives, friends, or lovers who had fallen in a pool of blood in front of them, and when they left them forever, the hatred for Kuina in their hearts was no less. In front of this group of pirates. Obviously, he has the power to repel pirates, but why didn't he show up earlier? If it were earlier, she would not have died. At this moment, Kuina still doesn't know that she has been hated by others. Looking at the pirates who were gradually approaching, Kuina took a step back and protected Wuan, the girl king behind her, to ensure that the little girl would not be injured by the pirates after a while. At this moment, a guy with white hair and a face full of whitebeard, like a white ape, shoved away a pirate who was blocking him, and walked out of the pirates with a ferocious look. And the big lion named Licky was also following Mochi at this time, with one front paw covering the red and swollen red envelope on his big face that was kicked by Kuina with a kick, tears of grievance in the corners of his eyes. Little girl, how dare you play niche? Don't you know that Nichi is me, the pet of Mochi, captain of the Buggy pirates? Mochi comforted Mochi, then looked at Kuina with murderous eyes, and shouted with a grim face. At this moment, Mochi fully interprets the essence of a pirate. However, at the next moment, a die-hard little pirate behind Mochi looked at Mochi in front of him in a puzzled manner, and corrected loudly. Deputy Captain Mochi, you are the deputy captain of our Buggy pirates. Boss Buggy is the captain. Hearing the correction from the younger brother behind him, Mochi's brows jumped, and his face instantly turned black. With one kick, Liji who was in power beside him was kicked to the side, and Mochi turned around in a rage, just to clean up the dead-hearted little brother just now. Niche, am I not your favorite pet? Bang, bang, bang. What's wrong with the deputy captain? The deputy captain is still the captain. If something happens to Boss Buggy one day, isn't Lousy the captain? Lousy appeared so handsome just now, and his perfect aura was disturbed by you idiot. You idiot is a shit stirrer. The younger brother who was being cleaned up still raised his hand tenaciously and said honestly. Deputy Captain Mochi, if I am a shit stirrer, then you are. Mochi's action was stagnant, and in an instant, it was a more violent storm-like blow. Bang, 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 I made you talk back. Let you talk back, let you talk back. Looking at Mochi who beat up the little pirate, not only the other pirates were so frightened that they closed their mouths immediately, for fear that when he would think like that idiot, he would not be able to control his mouth and say something that shouldn't be said. This beating is really cruel. Looking at this scene, Kuina almost laughed out loud. At this moment, a doubt suddenly appeared in Kuina's mind. How did such a stupid pirate survive in the sea until now? Regardless of Kuina's thoughts, Mochi beat the die-hard little pirate for 3 minutes, until he beat the little black thief until his eyes rolled in circles, and then he stopped. Humph! With an unpleasant snort, Mochi turned around and shouted towards the big lion Niche. Niche, come here for Lousy. Li Chi looked at the anger in Mochi's eyes that had not yet dissipated. With a shock all over his body, he quickly trotted to Mochi's side, and rubbed his big head on Mochi's leg. Mochi nodded with satisfaction, then looked at the other little pirates around, and said loudly. Today, let you see how powerful my Captain Mochi is. Let you know that your Captain Mochi is also very powerful. After speaking, Mochi turned his gaze to Kuina in front of him and said cruelly. Little girl, you're out of luck today. If you keep hiding, or hand over the treasure and squat aside, the uncle may not care about you. But now you actually jumped out by yourself, so don't blame the uncle for being so powerful today. Seeing Mochi turn over and ride directly on the big lion Niche, and walk over step by step with a long whip, Kuina's cold little face suddenly showed a half-smiling expression similar to Zanu. Slowly pulling Minazuki back into the scabbard, Kuina squeezed her fist and said. Really, the 4th of Hado Baile. After 3 minutes, Kuina clapped her little hands. After glancing at the 2 new big holes in the wall of the cabin, Kuina smiled and looked at the horrified group of pirates who had surrounded her, her voice still so cold and sweet. Now, can you guys stop? The group of little pirates who had surrounded Kuina instantly took a few steps back, looking at the girl in front of them with horrified expressions. Is he the ultimate monster? In fact, it was Mochi and the group of little pirates who suffered from the loss of not knowing the specific content of the reward order, otherwise Mochi, Li Ji and the others would not have ended up in such a miserable end. Kuina is beautiful. The beautiful and energetic cute appearance fell in the eyes of this group of little pirates, but at this moment they only felt that they were 10,000 times more terrifying than the legendary sea ghost. Gouda, 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 everyone swallowed their saliva involuntarily. You, what are you going to do? I told you not to mess around. That was just our deputy captain. Our real captain is the big pirate Buggy who offered a reward of 15 million Baileys. Even the red-haired one of the rumored 4 emperors in the sea can do it. The person who beats and scolds directly. That's right, if you know each other, let us go. Maybe our boss of Buggy. However, before the pirate's words were finished, Kuina suddenly glanced over. In an instant, all the little pirates were as tacit as they had rehearsed countless times, and at the same time fell to the ground. PFF'd, big sister, we were wrong, please accept us, we will listen to you in the future. Even Kuina was stunned by the actions of these pirates. Her originally cold eyes were stunned on her beautiful little face. Not only did she not feel any discomfort, but a contrast appeared. However, Kuina reacted quickly, and then returned to her previous icy appearance, and said lightly. Humph, I don't want a subordinate like you. Originally, Miss Ben came down to solve all of you. Hearing this sentence, all the pirates had expressions of horror on their faces. But Kuina didn't care about the mood of these people and continued. But then Zanu said that he wanted to requisition your pirate ship, and let you control the ship and take care of all kinds of things on the ship, big and small, and that's how you were left alive. Boss Zanu is right. All the pirates thanked in unison with tears on their faces. Kuina rolled her eyes at this group of pirates with no integrity, and ordered. Okay, from now on, your entire Buggy pirates have been captured by us. Now you leave this merchant ship and go to your own pirate ship and wait. Yes, big sister. Hearing Kuina's order, the pirates breathed a sigh of relief and answered. However, at this moment, a voice suddenly interrupted the evacuation of the pirates. Wait. Hearing this, all the pirates stopped, and Kuina also looked in the direction of the sound. I happened to see a tourist who was kneeling on the ground suddenly stand up. Ignoring the obstruction of his companions, he directly picked up a pirate knife that had fallen on the ground. You just let such a group of pirates do all evil. Look, look, so many people have been killed by such a group of pirates. Even my father was stabbed to death by this pirate just now. Can't forgive. I can never forgive. You obviously have such a strong strength. Why didn't you take action earlier? That way, so many people won't die. What's more, now that you have caught these pirates, why didn't you kill them? How many people do you want to keep them to harm? Don't you have any kindness? Kuina looked at this ferocious and roaring man and couldn't react for a while. What happened? Didn't you save them again? Why did they not only fail to thank them, but instead intensify their complaints and scold themselves? At this time, perhaps it was the man's words that resonated with other tourists, and they all complained. HMPH. That's it. To actually catch an evil pirate, not to mention killing it immediately, even if it is handed over to Marine and the world government, but you just let it go. What's in your mind? Woo woo woo, husband, wake up. Obviously have the power to catch pirates, but don't clear the pirates and captives. They will definitely be released back to sea in a few days. It's not us people who are unlucky then. How can people be so selfish? Quote. Kuina was slaughtered in place by the words of these people for a while, not knowing what to do. At this moment, Kuina suddenly felt that her sleeve was pulled by a small hand. Kuina turned her head subconsciously, just to meet the little girl behind her with a trace of blood on her small face, those big pure but a little godless eyes. Sister, I want Dad. A little white face in district. Quote. As soon as the little girl finished speaking, a woman in a lady's dress hurried over and hugged the little girl in her arms. He glanced at Kuina with disgust as if he was looking at the god of plague, and quickly carried the little girl away, while teaching at the same time. Shalwa, don't talk to such people in the future, your father was just. Only Kuina was left in a daze. The pirates on one side watched the scene and didn't know whether they should go or not. However, listening to the tourists around who had been scared by themselves and the others and could only hold their heads on the ground and wait to die, they were all a little unhappy now that they were swearing at Kuina. They are pirates, scum on the sea, and people abandoned by the entire sea, none of them deny these. They don't even know the laws of the kingdom, nor the etiquette of the nobles, and they also burn, kill, loot, and do all kinds of evil. However, even their pirates know how to repay. Learn to respect the strong. However, in their eyes, these are just lambs to be slaughtered, and they are so shameless towards their savior, and at the same time, it is also a real strong attitude. One by one, the pirates looked at these tourists with disdain or bloodthirsty. Another pirate looked at the middle-aged man who rushed out at the beginning with a knife in his hand, but only dared to roar and scold at the eldest sister's head at this time, and his murderous aura was instantly released. Immediately, the man who was still yelling at Kuina felt a chill all over his body, as if he was being stared at by some beast, and the knife in his hand fell directly to the ground. Clang! Waste! All the pirates were contemptuous at the same time, and the shy middle-aged man almost didn't find a mouse hole to get into. But at the same time, the middle-aged man looked at Kuina with increasing disgust. If these pirates had been killed earlier, Lousy wouldn't be so ugly. When thinking like this, the middle-aged man shouted at Kuina with more arrogance. What are you doing? Why don't you quickly kill all these evil pirates? Could it be that you really intend to cover up these pirates? Aren't you afraid that the dead souls here will turn into resentful ghosts to find you? And Kuina still didn't speak, just stood there blankly. However, at this moment, a gentle young voice came in. Yeah, we are planning to blast the pirates of the Buggy pirates, what are you going to do? Hearing this, the middle-aged man was furious and immediately turned his head to look in the direction from which the voice came. The same goes for everyone else. It was to see Zanu with long sky blue hair and a white trench coat walking in from the door, and behind Zanu, there were Buggy, Buggy and a group of pirates from the Buggy Pirates. When Kuina heard Zanu's voice, she instantly woke up from her daze. She really can't understand why these people are venting their anger on herself, but Kuina knows that her brother must know the reason. Because Zanu is almost omnipotent perfect teenager in her impression. However, this time Zanu didn't seem to see Kuina's aggrieved eyes. He walked right in front of Kuina, came directly to the middle-aged man, looked at the middle-aged man. Still with that gentle look, he smiled and said, "We do want to shelter them, because we want them to carry us on our next voyage. What's the problem?" Looking at Zanu in front of him, the middle-aged man subconsciously took a step back. I don't know why, but the middle-aged man looked at this young man who seemed to have a good temper and bullied him, and there was always something in his heart, heavy. You are just a little white face around Kuina. Your master doesn't dare to speak to me like this, how dare you? Zanu didn't say anything about the middle-aged man calling himself the little white face beside Kuina, instead he asked back with a smile. Yeah, it seems that you have also read the wanted notice, then you also know that Kuina is a great swordsman. What is the name of a great swordsman? Maybe you don't know, but yesterday Kuina slashed the sea with a knife, you should have seen it. Then, I also want to ask you, where did you have the courage to yell at Kuina like that? Humph. The middle-aged man looked at Zanu's weak appearance at this moment, and suppressed the fear just now, and said disdainfully. What about Dajanhao? What if I know her strength? Could she still kill me for no reason? Besides, she obviously has such power, but she doesn't use it to protect ordinary people like us. Seeing that so many of us died, the people came out. The deaths of these people were all caused by Kuina. Even if she was a step late for something, but now she has already defeated the pirates, why didn't she kill them or capture them and hand them over to Marine? Instead, she blatantly wanted to let them go. Could it be that she was right? Is it possible that our relatives and friends deserve to be killed by pirates? When the tourists behind the middle-aged man heard the words of the middle-aged man, they also echoed one by one. Listening to the scolding from the group of people around me, and looking at the slightly mean expression of the middle-aged man in front of me. The expression on Zanu's face didn't change, instead he turned to Buggy behind him and said, "Captain Buggy, can you lend me a gun with a louder gun?" Buggy was stunned when he heard Zanu's words, but he quickly reacted. Although he didn't know that Zanu could kill everyone present with a single finger, not only did he not use the killer yet, but it was too early to borrow a gun, but Buggy knew that Zanu had a big fist and was the boss, so he just had to listen to the boss. There are some. Having said that, Buggy took out 2 fiery guns directly from his waist and handed them directly to Zanu. Taking the gun, Zanu shot directly at the sky. Bang! Everyone was taken aback by the gunshot, and the originally noisy scene was instantly quiet. What are you doing? The middle-aged man standing at the front also had trembling legs at this time, but he still looked at Zanu and shouted. "If you dare to hurt me, wait for Marine to be wanted." When it came to this, the middle-aged man suddenly couldn't talk anymore. At this time, Zanu aimed the muzzle of the gun at the middle-aged man in front of him and smiled. "Why don't you go on? Are you trying to say I'm going to be wanted by Marine?" "Huh." Zanu smiled contemptuously before continuing. "You were asking why Kuina didn't show up to you earlier. But, I'm curious, how did you come to the conclusion that Kuina has to ask you? Just because she has this ability, she has to take care of you. Is it selfish to not save you? Speaking of selfishness, I would like to know, who pushed my old father out to help me block a knife just now? Oh, by the way, someone thought again at that time, the old thing should die quickly. If you die, the property in the family is all mine. Mister, did you think so just now, and surprised to see your old father dead?" When the middle-aged man heard Zanu's words, his face turned pale, as if he saw the ghost of his just-dead father behind Zanu. Buggy, Buggy, and a group of pirates who came in from the outside deck looked at the pale middle-aged man with disdain, with a little sympathy in their disgust. Hey, there is another person who is going to be driven crazy by this smiling devil in front of him. When everyone thought so, they heard Zanu continue to smile and say, "And you, why didn't Kuina, who you have been emphasizing before, show up earlier, or your relatives, friends, etc. wouldn't die?" But why does Kuina have to save your dead relatives and friends? Of course, I also want to ask a question at this time. When your relatives and friends die, why don't you go down hard and come down? Your relatives and friends didn't save themselves and watch them die, but now you actually resent Kuina. We can't beat the pirates. The lady who took the little girl just now retorted. Zanu heard the words, looked at the lady with gentle eyes, and said with a smile. But, as far as I know, you were the one who wanted your husband to die. As for the reason, you have a child in your arms, so I won't say anything. After speaking, Zanu looked directly at everyone this time and smiled. Actually, having said so much, you resent the nature of Kuina, you just want to divert your hatred. Because you are cowardly, you are incompetent, but you are not only killed by the pirates, but also robbed of your treasures, but you dare not go to the pirates to go all out, so you still lack someone to vent your anger and unwillingness. And Kuina, that's the person you're looking for. When you see Kuina coming out, you feel that Kuina is the kind of person who is kind, responsible, and compassionate, so when facing Kuina, you clearly know that she is very strong, but she doesn't. I'll make a move on you. While telling Kuina how miserable she was, she cursed and cursed with peace of mind. This is what is called being good and being deceived by others, and you can play on this boat. Even if you are civilians, your wealth should be almost the same as those of the so-called nobles. As for how did this wealth come from? Just what happened today. Looking at it, it shouldn't be a means of harmony, right? All the thoughts in the hearts of all the tourists present were directly peeled off by Zanu. All of them were pale, and kept backing away, not daring to look at Zanu at all. And Zanu, still not giving up. Then he said, then, the topic goes back to Kuina not saving you. Why are you shouting now? Then please ladies and gentlemen, before this, do you still remember how you mocked, abused Kuina and me? How did you do all kinds of insults to your savior in front of you, while humiliating, licking your face and asking Kuina to save you again? I've never seen such a brazen person. Hearing Zanu's last sentence, many of the tourists who were blushing and purplish at first spit out a mouthful of blood, and then passed out gorgeously. Buggy behind Zanu watched this scene, and when he looked at Zanu's back again, he couldn't help shivering, his eyes were full of fear. This guy is definitely a real evil. An existence that is thousands of times more terrifying than Whitebeard in the New World. This guy is definitely a real evil. An existence that is thousands of times more terrifying than Whitebeard in New World. I didn't use any force, just so hard to pass out the blood that many people said directly. It's really scary. At this time, Zanu ignored those who fainted, and focused on the middle-aged man who was already pale. When the middle-aged man was targeted by Zanu, his heart stopped suddenly. For fear of hearing Zanu's voice again. And Zanu, who was looking at the middle-aged man with a familiar smile again, said, as for what you said before, why don't you kill these pirates, then I'm wasting some saliva and explaining to you. First, they are useful to us. Since they are useful to us, why do we have to listen to you and kill them? Secondly, did you forget that I, Kuina, was also a pirate who was offered a bounty by Marine, and it was at the level of 80 million Baileys. Speaking of which, we both have to thank you for this, don't you think? At this moment, the middle-aged man felt that his whole body was cold. Everything about himself and everything is actually being carried out under the supervision of the other party. Even his own thoughts have no way to escape the surveillance of the other party. I am like a puppet, putting on this self-righteous show in front of others. How can I feel confident that I have deceived others? Once again, looking at Zanu's smiling ruby-red eyes, the middle-aged man is like an evil spirit staring straight at all his actions from every pair of eyes. No, don't come here. With a loud shout, the next second the middle-aged man rolled his eyes and ran out of the hall as if he was crazy. After a few seconds, PFF'd, a sound of falling water came directly from the outside into the silent hall. At this moment, apart from Kuina, all tourists and pirates lowered their heads, for fear that if they accidentally saw Zanu's eyes, they could not stand the psychological pressure, and the middle-aged man the same fate of jumping off the boat. This person is an evil ghost in hell, especially those pair of ruby-red eyes that can see through people's hearts and human nature, and then use the simplest language in the weakest part of human nature to completely crush people's minds. Isn't this what the devil is? And Kuina, at this time, her eyes lighted slightly, as if she had figured out something. At this moment, Kuina's temperament suddenly changed a little, but when he looked at it, it seemed that nothing had happened. Hearing the sound of diving from outside the cabin, the smile on Zanu's face did not change at all. It's just that at this moment, no one will take this young man with a warm smile as a little white face worth 100 Baileys. It seems that the uncle just now figured out his sins, ignorant life, and chose to get rid of himself. Then, how about you? Hearing Zanu's words, no one dared to breathe loudly anymore. All of them lowered their heads in horror, for fear that they would be targeted by Zanu and followed in the footsteps of the middle-aged man just now. Looking at this scene, the smile on Zanu's face finally disappeared, his face became a little cold, and there was a kind of awe-inspiring aura on his body, just like a high emperor. Gazing at all the tourists with their heads bowed in disdain, Zanu said coldly, "A group of unknowing ants. I am in a good mood to save you. It is my kindness and my mercy. However, don't take my kindness and mercy as a reason for you to be reckless. A group of ants who don't know the so-called, you're weak and humble, let me run over them by myself, you all hate to get your hands dirty. Since you choose to live like an ant, never jump. Because, all of you are just ants. Understand?" After speaking, Zanu turned around and walked towards the door. When passing by Kuina, he glanced at Kuina and seemed to notice the change in Kuina's body. A hint of satisfaction flashed in his ruby-red eyes. It's not worth my effort to use the humanity of this group of people to sharpen Kuina's mind. Now it seems that the effect is still very good. Thinking like this, Zanu's imperial aura dissipated in an instant, and he returned to his usual elegance and easy-going, and said with a soft smile, "Your sword seems to be sharper, and it seems that the harvest is good." Kuina walked side by side beside Zanu, glanced at Zanu, and said, "Thank you, I'm fine now." Humph. Even so, Kuina's tone was a little more relaxed and free and easy, but the sword intent inadvertently revealed on her body was a little more decisive, and at the same time sharper. Kuina is not stupid. Although he was indeed overwhelmed by the scolding of the group just now, he fell into his own horns, but since Zanu's later appearance, and some words that seemed to be specifically for himself, Kuina has long since changed from the previous confusion, came out. At the beginning of the association, Zanu provoked himself with words, which made him delay a little time, just half of the killing here, so that he could not come to the rescue earlier. Afterwards, I specifically told me not to kill these pirates before I came down. Perhaps it is one reason that these pirates are needed to operate the boat. However, there is definitely a reason for a guy like a diving middle-aged man to jump out to find himself in trouble. Reason. It can be said that this time, whether it was the Buggy pirates who happened to collide, the tourists on the merchant ship, and the final result of Gu himself, it was actually arranged by Zanu. This guy is like a big hand, playing everyone in the palm of his hand. Thinking of this, Kuina couldn't help but let out another snort. But when he thought that the ultimate purpose of Zanu's arrangement was to make himself, Kuina, who was walking by Zanu's side, felt soft in his heart. In the end, as if nothing had happened, he rolled up Zanu's arm in Kabuto and walked forward. Zanu was stunned for a moment, then turned his head to look at Kuina, only to find that Kuina looked at him with a puzzled face, as if he was doing nothing. It's like asking yourself, what's the matter? Same. However, Zanu still saw that Kuina's pink earlobes were flushing red at this time, which was really cute. Zanu smiled and didn't expose the little girl's disguise, just let Kuina hold his arm. Kuina, who had been quietly paying attention to Zanu's changes in expression, saw Zanu and didn't give any unusual expressions, so she breathed a long sigh of relief in her heart. A happy smile appeared on Kuina's face, and she walked out of the cabin with Zanu's arms in her arms. Only a group of pirates from the Buggy pirates were left behind silently, with lemons in their hearts. Early the next morning, on the Buggy pirate ship, Kuina looked at Buggy, Buggy, Mochi, even the big lion niche and the ecstatic expressions on the faces of the pirates lying neatly on the railings of the upper deck. Looking at Zanu in the morning light, who closed his eyes like an elegant gentleman, and gracefully played the violin, Zanu, Kuina's little face was full of pride. As if the person who was pulling a beautiful movement was herself. Comparing her eyes slightly, listening to the soft music, accompanied by the soft sunlight in the morning. Kuina's white and pure face also showed an expression of enjoyment. Ding, ding, ding. A new inheritor has been detected within 100 nautical miles of you. Please find it as soon as possible. Zanu, who was playing the violin, paused and opened his eyes. New inheritor, Zanu murmured, and his mind instantly entered his mind, just in time to see the image of a heritage hero flashing frantically. Oh, the first time I sensed, the pattern of the inherited hero flashed with such brilliance, which was countless times stronger than the first induction between me and Kuina. It seems that this new inheritor is quite compatible with this unknown hero. Good. Seeing such a scene, Zanu was also a little surprised. That way, you don't need to waste too much time on this inheritor. After all, not everyone is a Kuina. Well, I see this new inheritor in that reverse. While thinking so, a ray of light that only Zanu could see shot from the heritage hero who was shining with the light of heritage, came straight to reality and shot in a certain direction. Following this light, Zanu turned around, only to find that he was right in front of their sailing. Well, it seems that luck is really good this time. Within 100 nautical miles ahead, you should be almost at Orange Town, right? That guy is in Orange Town. Thinking like this, Zanu turned to look at Buggy and the others lying on the deck on the second floor who had not recovered, and laughed. Hey, Captain Buggy, please speed up the boat, please. Yes, boss. When Buggy heard Zanu's voice, his body shuddered subconsciously. He recovered from the beautiful and distant violin music just now, stood up instantly and answered loudly. Since seeing Zanu's horror yesterday, the entire Buggy pirates have been completely obedient to Zanu. For them now, the most terrifying thing is Zanu's smiling gaze. Smiling devil. This is an indelible shadow imprinted in the hearts of all the crew members of the Buggy pirates. Even if Zanu can play music enough to make them inadvertently addicted. Near noon, the Buggy pirate ship finally came to a seemingly peaceful town, of course, before Zanu and others arrived. Look, it's a pirate ship. Pirates have come to our Orange Town. Everyone, run. The pirates are here. Quote. After a while, there was no one over the port, but there were still some daring residents hiding behind the low wall in the distance and looking curiously at the docked pirate ship. Among them, there was a girl with short orange hair and short ears hiding in the crowd. Looking at the docked huge pirate ship, not only was there no fear at all, but a happy smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. The moment Zanu and Kuina got off the pirate ship, Zanu glanced at a corner of the wall, and a playful look appeared in his ruby-red eyes. Afterwards, Zanu turned his head and said to Buggy and others who were following behind him. Captain Buggy, call all of you, bring your money, and buy some supplies in this town. We have a long journey ahead. Zanu looked at Buggy and the others who were puzzled, thought for a while, and said directly. Just buy supplies for at least a month's voyage. 1 month. Buggy, Buggy and others all opened their mouths, speechless in surprise. You know, 1 month is basically enough to visit the entire East Blue. They just don't know where Zanu and Kuina are going. Even if they go directly to the Grand Line, they won't buy a month's supply of supplies. However, the one who is talking is, after all, the evil boss. We don't know anything, but we dare not ask. Just follow the command and you're done. After Zanu saw that everyone on the ship had already entered the town with money, he turned to look at Kuina, who had a puzzled look on his face, and said, Okay, Kuina, let's go in there too, shall we? Saying that, I walked towards Orange Town like this. At this time, Kuina still didn't understand the meaning of Zanu's operation, so he quickly stepped forward, followed Zanu, and asked, Zanu, what are you doing? Zanu smiled and said mysteriously as he walked, I'm setting up a trap for a certain little orange cat. Quote. Glancing at Kuina, who was looking increasingly confused, Zanu directly changed the subject and said, Kuina, I heard that there are a lot of novelties in this town. You can take a good look at it in a while. I have an official work to do later. The specific situation will be known when you come back. Kuina looked at Zanu angrily, and said in disgust, God babbling, don't say it, this lady is not uncommon. Humph. Zanu just smiled and didn't say anything. The two gradually walked into the town like this, leaving only a huge unattended pirate ship in the entire port. A few minutes later, a shadow escaped the attention of others and sneaked into the pirate ship. Hey hey hey, there must be a lot of money in such a big pirate ship. Looks like there's going to be a bumper harvest today. The person here has short orange hair and a lovely face. She is the girl who was hiding in the corner of the harbor just now. The girl walked into the cabin and walked through the pirate ship who was familiar with the road. After almost a few breaths, the girl came to the door of the warehouse dedicated to storing treasures on the pirate ship. Looking at the warehouse door in front of her, the girl wrinkled her nose, her big eyes flashing with excitement. Hey, this girl smells Bailey. Saying that, a thin iron wire appeared in the girl's hand at some point. Coming to the door lock, the girl skillfully inserted the wire into the lock, and after only twisting it a few times, the lock on the door fell to the ground with a bang. The girl excitedly pushed open the warehouse door. And at the moment when the door opened, the girl's watery eyes magically turned into Bailey's symbol. Wow, so much Bailey. And gold. Ha ha ha. This is a fortune. I didn't expect this pirate ship to be so rich. There are at least hundreds of millions of Baileys in it. Hey hey, this pirate group is just too stupid. There are so many treasures on the ship, and there are not some people left to guard. Hey hey, exactly, let me help them put away now. Ha ha ha. Excitedly laughing, the girl was about to go in and help the Buggy pirates keep the finances when a gentle boy's laughter suddenly came from behind the girl. Hee hee, the treasure here, if you estimate the specific value, together with the remaining Bailey, it is estimated that it is worth at least 800 million Bailey. Hearing the boy's voice behind him, the girl's body gradually froze. Hee hee, the treasure here, if you estimate the specific value, together with the remaining Bailey, it is estimated that it is worth at least 800 million Bailey. Hearing the boy's voice behind him, the girl's body gradually froze. At this time, the gentle voice of the young man sounded again. As for why they didn't send someone to guard it. Hearing this, the excited expression on her face almost froze on her face, and she could even hear the teasing in the voice of the young man behind her. If I send them here, how can I catch your little thief cat? You mean it, Nami? Nami was shocked when she heard the person behind her calling out her name. When she turned around, she saw the blue-haired boy who had walked into the town just now standing in the passage of the cabin with a smile. Looking at himself with a smile. At the side of the boy, there was the girl who had walked with the boy before holding a tachi, and she was leaning against the wall of the cabin, looking at herself curiously. Hee hee. Looking at the posture of the two, Nami couldn't help laughing dryly. Those big watery eyes blinked, which made them look extra cute. Kuina, who was leaning against the wall, looked at Nami carefully, then turned to Zanu, and said curiously. Hey, Zanu, she was the one you were talking about before. Well, it's really interesting to watch, but it shouldn't make you think about her specifically, right? Could it be that you've already had a crush on her? After speaking, Kuina's tone gradually took on a hint of danger. Looking at Kuina with a bad tone, Zanu smiled angrily and explained. Kuina, don't underestimate this little girl. She has very strong sailing skills. I can't guarantee it in the world, but I can be sure that, at least in this world, her sailing skills can have the strongest title. Having said that, Zanu's eyes were on Nami again, and he chuckled lightly. Besides, this little orange cat is also one of my goals for going to sea this time. Saying that, Zanu looked at Nami, who was the only one who could see the inheritance light covering his entire body, and the corner of his eyes smiled even more. I didn't expect to find not only a talented navigator, but also an inheritor this time. This time I came to this orange town, and I really gained a lot. In this way, before I start the next inheritance, there are only 3 inheritors left. Zanu was secretly happy. And when Kuina heard Zanu say, one of the goals of this time to go to sea, she immediately reacted, and she immediately looked at Nami with kindness. She knew that this girl named Nami would be their new partner. However, at this moment, Nami, who was opposite, suddenly exclaimed in surprise. You mean her name is Kuina? That great swordsman who offered a reward of 80 million Bailey? Nami stared at Kuina in surprise. At this moment, even the original fear seemed to be suppressed. He directly passed Zanu and ran in front of Kuina. His face was full of hope and he stared at Kuina, not daring to believe. Are you really that peerless sword girl Kuina? Kuina was taken aback by Nami's sudden enthusiasm, and subconsciously glanced at Zanu, who was on the side, only to find that Zanu was smirking again. Kuina was a little helpless, so she could only turn her head to look at the girl named Nami who was staring at her with hope, nodded and said, I am indeed Kuina, is this? Unexpectedly, after hearing Kuina's confession, Nami jumped into Kuina's arms and cried with tears on his face. Ooh, Sister Kuina, can you help me? My village was occupied by a group of thieves. Immediately afterwards, Nami cried heartbrokenly about her past in Kuina's arms. Hearing Kuina's sympathy burst out for a while, her innocent and cute little face was not as cold as when she faced Buggy and the others, but full of sympathy. However, the playful look on Zanu's face was indeed more intense at this time. However, Zanu did not interrupt Nami's narrative, and just stared at Nami who was crying into tears at this moment. A few minutes later, Kuina was completely immersed in Nami's sad past, and her eyes, which were already kind, gradually burst into tears unconsciously. At this time, Nami, who was crying in Kuina's arms, suddenly released Kuina's body, turned around like a cat, and instantly passed by and ran out of the cabin. Hum. What kind of big swordsman? Wasn't it being played around by this girl? 80 million Bailey offered a reward. With such strength, even 20 million Arlong is not as good as. I'm moved to cry. How can you run away if you don't cry? Also promised to help this girl deal with those wicked people. Humph. They are also a group of pirates. What kind of good people are you pretending to be? Don't think that this girl didn't hear it just now. The little white face next to her said that she was specially set up here, just to catch this girl. Think this girl is so easy to deceive. Humph. It's a pity that there are so many treasures, if only mine would be great. While taking the road and running away, Nami couldn't help but have a lot of thoughts in his heart. However, the next moment, a familiar voice sounded from behind Nami again. So you want these treasures? Hearing this voice again, Nami's face changed, and when he was about to speed up, a slender but powerful hand stretched out directly, pinching Nami's back collar and lifting Nami's whole body. At this moment, Nami, like an orange cat caught by the neck of fate, struggled in the air, but to no avail. Nami, who struggled to no avail, turned his head stiffly and smiled awkwardly. Xiaobai, hello little brother, can you put me down? However, Zanu looked at Nami's pleasing and begging eyes with a half smile but jokingly said, What do you think? Moreover, until this time, Kuina, who remained at the entrance of the passage, did not react. I was actually deceived just now. And I was tricked into tears. You little liar. Kuina Shunpo stepped on and appeared directly beside Zanu, looking at the girl in front of her angrily. Her innocent and cute little face was full of resentment. If it wasn't for knowing that the Nami in front of him would be his future companion, it might even be possible. Now Kuina will definitely teach Nami a good lesson. Nami's eyes dimmed slightly when he heard Kuina's forehead. However, at this moment, Zanu said, Kuina, what Nami said before is not all false. Okay. Kuina was stunned, and even Nami was curiously looking at the boy who was holding his collar. By the way, this little white face who is only worth 100 Bailey seems to know me right now. Looking at it like this, he seems to know me well. When Nami was thinking about this, he suddenly saw the corner of the boy's mouth twitching in front of him, and couldn't help but think again. This guy, your face cramps. Puff. At this moment, Zanu suddenly felt that observation hockey's practice was too ultimate, which is not a good thing. Especially now. Without the slightest hesitation, Zanu immediately turned off observation hockey's perception. After taking a deep breath, Zanu returned to his previous smile. Of course, if Buggy and the others saw this smiling appearance, they would definitely be scared to death. However, although Nami has never seen the ghost smile, he was also stared at by Zanu's smile. What are you going to do? Looking at Nami's pitiful and cute appearance, Zanu's smile really got even bigger. Said, everything on this ship is mine, but you came to steal it, and now you have been caught by me, what do you think I should do? Kuina next to him looked at Zanu's appearance, and Zanu was about to start his own bad taste again. Zanu used to scare Zoro like this when he was at the Isshin dojo. Kuina still remembers Zoro not long after he came to the dojo. Once again he was frightened by Zanu's words and hid outside the dojo for several days, not daring to come in. However, this time Kuina did not intend to persuade Zanu. Who let this little girl lie to her tears? Let Zanu teach him a lesson. Kuina thought with a dark heart. Seeing that Zanu had no intention of letting go, Nami was about to cry, when he heard Zanu continue. You have been caught by me now, so from today onwards, you are our captive. After swallowing, Nami looked at Zanu with an ugly expression and said helplessly. So, what do you want me to do for you when you set up this trap to catch me? Hearing Nami's question, the smile on Zanu's face got even bigger. As for Kuina and I, we plan to go to the first half of the Grand Line first, and then go to the new century. She wants to challenge all swordsmen in the world, and I also have a last resort reason to travel the world, but on our way, we lack a navigator with knowledge of navigation, so, you have been requisitioned by us. Having said this, Zanu's face slowly approached Nami, his smile did not change. You will be our sailing tool man in the future. Also, I'll leave the cooking to you in the future. Also, it's you who cleans the ship. Listening to Zanu's first words, especially the phrase, to travel around the world, made Nami a little fascinated, and murmured in his heart. I also want to travel around the world, and I want to draw a nautical map of the world. But, thinking of his current situation, Nami sighed in despair. This ideal may only be realized in a future dream. However, before the sadness in Nami's heart fully rose, Zanu's next words entered his ears one after another domineeringly. You will be our sailing tool man in the future. Also, I'll leave the cooking to you in the future. Also, it's you who cleans the ship. Listening to this guy with blue hair and a bad face in front of him gave him the life he had arranged for him, Nami immediately said unhappy. Hey, why, don't I just want to steal a little bit of Bailey from you? Why do you decide my future life like this? I'm not convinced. Just after Nami finished shouting, Zanu smiled indifferently and said. You don't agree, but you can't beat us. What can you do if you don't agree? Looking at Zanu's appearance, Nami's teeth are itching with anger. At this time, even Kuina, who was watching the excitement, suddenly felt that she really wanted to hit people. This guy Zanu has such a skinny side. Why didn't he find out before? But now Zanu like this, I seem to. I like it more. He is no longer a god sitting high in the sky, making it difficult for people to reach, but now he is really, so cute and like. Zanu, who had no idea that he was labeled cute by Kuina, glanced at the luminous frequency of the inheritance heroes whom the system met, and finally looked at Nami again, with the same smile on his face that Nami wanted to hit. Road. Look, you didn't refute either, so that's it, HNA tool person. Navigation tool man. Nami clenched his teeth, suddenly stretched out his hands, grabbed Zanu's arm that was still holding his back collar, opened his mouth and bit like a wild cat. However, what Nami doesn't know is that in this world, there is a power called armament hockey. Especially armament hockey, who has practiced to the level of Zanu, almost as long as he feels danger from somewhere in his body, he will subconsciously and automatically cover it with armament hockey. What's more, with Zanu's current strength, even if he doesn't use armament hockey in Nami's teeth, he can't break the defense at all. However, for the sake of Nami's teeth, Zanu subconsciously removed the armament hockey that had been covered on his arm. And then, just let Nami eat it. Especially, after a while, Zanu watched Nami glaring at him fiercely while biting his arm tightly, as if he wanted to scare him away, and said with concern. Do you want me to pour some water for you? Seeing how hard you are biting. PFF'd. As soon as Zanu said these words, Kuina who was standing next to him couldn't hold back any longer, and threw himself on Zanu's back and laughed. He. Zanu, when did you become so funny? He. Glancing at Zanu viciously, Nami was helpless when he looked at Zanu, who had always been incapacitated, and let go of Zanu's arm, perhaps because he knew that the person in front of him needed his own abilities and would not hurt himself for the time being. At this time, Nami was also a little loose, looking at Zanu and said. Hey, if you don't want to cause trouble and put your life in danger, you'd better let me go. This time, I'm telling the truth. However, Zanu looked at Nami, smiled, and said, however, I don't believe it. You. Nami got angry, looked at Zanu and shouted. I really didn't lie to you this time. Even the story I just told is actually part of it. Having said that, Nami thought of his village and the dead Belmere again. This time, tears of sadness flowed out of the cute little face, and choked. The village in my hometown was occupied by a group of fishermen pirates. They are extremely cruel. The strength is also the most powerful existence I have ever seen. His strength is 10 times that of us humans. You can't beat him. You better let me go. It's good for you and me. After shouting the last sentence, Nami seemed to have exhausted all his strength and squatted directly on the ground, hugging his head and crying. Zanu looked at Nami, who was sad and crouched directly on the ground, hugging his head and losing his voice in pain. In the end, he just spit out a few words. I do not believe. And this time, as Zanu's voice fell, Kuina, who was lying behind Zanu, also came to Zanu's side and raised Minazuki in his hand, with the same expression as Zanu, and said lightly, I don't believe it either. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.